This episode of the Gladiator podcast is made possible by our generous supporters. Special thanks to our Hoplomachus and Gladiator tier patrons, like RecDeck. Support the show and become a patron today at patreon.com/secondright. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to the Gladiator podcast, your place for Gladiator news and content. Oh, that feels good to say. Yeah,
It's been a bit.
Been a hot minute, but we've been completed. You know, we got the last step plating on now. We're new, back, ready for action. And to start things off, it's me, JB, and with me this week we have...
I am perpetually UFO, don't call me anything else.
As well as... And there's a blight that may or may not show up at some point. And of course, behind the scenes we have...
Effie, who
may not be
will
talking.
be behind the scenes at the moment.
Yes, they are behind the block. That's fine. It's we have ghosts. Don't worry about it. As a constant reminder, when we talk about sets in this way, we are talking from a Gladiator point of view. We are not talking about any other format on Arena. We're not talking about any other format outside of Arena. This is wholly focused on how it's going to affect the 100-card singleton format of Gladiator. So,
yes. Yeah. And apparently seismic ones might be muted.
Oh no.
If we didn't hit a road bump at some point in starting this up, it just wouldn't feel right. You know?
Yeah. As far as I can tell, at least on my end of things, I'm hearing a seismic, so I think it's okay now. Perfect.
Yeah, it's not coming through on Twitch. So we're going to take down the stream for a second to refresh Seismic's audio. We just have had this issue recently with OBS where one person just decides to not come through, even if we can hear them in every other location.
Yeah. So we'll be right back. Hello and we're here again, I think. UFO, talk!
Hello, I'm UFO. And, let's see if we have the Seismic Wands with us.
Yeah, Seismic, talk!
It's good to be back. I cost 1 Phyrexian mana, and if you spend life on it, I come in with 2 fewer loyalty counters.
I'm are completed, here, and baby. You are completed. Great.
Yeah. With this podcast team for the duration of this part of the stream, we are also complete.
Yes, notably, for the first part of this stream, and maybe the rest of the stream, our fourth and much-loved host, Violet Blight, has other commitments that they have to finish up with, notably being very good at a game that involves bugs.
Yeah, they got too good at gaming.
Yep, they're too much of a gamer now.
So, we are now here. We are doing a set review. We are here to talk about cards that we like and we think are going to make an impact on Gladiator as a format, whether just how they're seeing play, where they're seeing play, or, maybe they're just neat.
Yeah, cards we're playing are cards we want to play, effectively.
Or cards we just want to...
interested in.
Yeah.
Cards we want to make sure to talk about so people don't play them, in at least one example.
I'm not sure you could, but let's continue.
Yeah, so, to start ourselves off, we've got our first card of the day. It is AO, the Dawn Sky.
So, before we get into the dragons themselves, I'm not sure I'm actually caught up on the lore of Where did these dragons come from? Because they're not the original spirit dragons.
Yes, they are the original dragons.
They kind of are. They're reincarnations of the original spirit dragons. They are... They go by different names, but like they're the same, like...
2 of them are trans?
Yeah, 2 of them are trans, but they are reincarnations of their former selves.
Yeah.
Hey, that shows pays to be caught up on the lore, because I had no clue.
Yeah, so they are reincarnations of the originals. As it was talked about in the very first spoiler part of the season, the red one was the one that actually like was first reborn and then brought the others back, basically.
Ah, cool. But
this one is Ao the Dawn Sky. This is actually the only of the dragons that we're talking about today, I think. Yeah,
I believe so.
The case. Well,
the rest are very good. I would note.
Yeah,
but this one is the one that I was interested in talking about, so I'm going to talk about it now. It is Ao the Dawn Sky, 3 white for a 5/4 legendary creature dragon spirit. Importantly, a spirit. Honestly, that was just keeps getting closer, and this is a good ad for that deck. It has flying and vigilance, and it says when Ao the Dawn Sky dies, choose 1. Look at the top 7 cards of your library, put any number of non-land permanent cards with total mana value 4 or less from among them onto the battlefield, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order, or put 2 +1/+1 counters on each permanent you control that's a creature or vehicle. So, the main reason I want to talk about this card was this is probably the best dragon for a controlling mid-range list. This card does it all in that sense. It's a very fast clock on a flying vigilance body, so it gets to attack and block. Like it blocks a lot of the other 5 mana threats that see play in the format very well, with one exception. And otherwise, like, it's just going to keep on chipping in. And then, especially in a controlling deck, this is a threat that you don't mind wrathing. So let's say their board starts getting bigger, you're able to get in for 1 more point of 5 and then wrath the board, and then you get this effect stapled on the bottom. And this is an effect that if they kill it, you get this value out of it too. Primarily... Sorry?
I think that specifically the fact that all of these spirit dragons are very good to get wrathed is especially interesting looking at this in mid-range lists where you can use this as a card to both be a very good attacker. It has vigilance, so it works as a blocker against aggro really well as an endgame blocker. And then against control, even if they kill this somehow, you're still getting essentially like a sort of treasure keeper-esque effect from it, getting something slightly smaller but still very impactful from it.
Yeah, and that theme is definitely shown across all the ones that I can remember. I know there's a few that are not as good in that regard, but the green one and the red one, especially when I, in addition to the white, are all threats that usually will force some sort of removal, whether it be a sweeper or targeted, and even when they are removed, still can further your game plan.
Also, this is going to sound a bit more like a joke, but if you can slam with a large board in a deck that's playing this card and they block this but not a bunch of your smaller creatures, if you're able to kill this, or if they happen to block with, say, a first striking creature and kill this, that bottom mode can just be lethal sometimes.
I expect to see this come in play on like a Martyr Aristocrats board. They just toss it to a Yaheni or something and then...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so that can happen if you put this in the top deck of like a Kratz or a token or tokens deck or something.
Mm-hmm.
Also worth noting a little bit, this also hitting vehicles is very good for specifically Aether Sphere Harvester, being both a creature you want to be bigger, having the ability to gain lifelink, means that the counters that it gets, regardless of whether it's a creature at the time, make it really useful to have that like added use case.
Yeah. I also just want to mention
career vehicles.
Oh yeah. I just want to quickly mention with that top mode, most often what this ends up being in practice, because I was curious to see how often it hits things. Looking at the top 7 cards, this is often hitting, especially in a controlling mid-range deck, or even just a mid-range deck, this is hitting a Planeswalker, or a permanent base removal spell, or a creature. And there, like, you know, there's a bunch of powerful 4-drop creatures that if they just kill this and you get like a Boss-Raised Lieutenant in white or something, or like a in red, you could get Chandra Torch of Defiance off of this. It's just like, that could just be GG's. Oh. Yeah.
It's a good thing that this is not a tutor effect like, say, the Egg Hulk is.
Yeah.
Because
good.
Even for CMC worth of stuff could become a very powerful tutor.
Yeah.
But I'm very glad that this is like just the top, but it's still going to be very powerful when you're getting that effect.
Yeah, you want to be playing this in a more permanent heavy deck. That's why when I mention it for control, I say more controlling mid-range, even though I still think that this is very good for, say, blue-white control, which will happen to play a lot of permanents anyway, just because, you know, hey, look, those Planeswalkers are good, and hey, look, those are some good control finishers at 4 mana.
I do think in control you need to lean a little bit more towards permanents, because there's a lot of permanents that are like really good control cards, and like, however, you want to be using that ability for when it dies if you're going to be playing this card, and it means you do need to put in maybe a couple more banishing light effects, or you might want to include more 3 and 4 mana planeswalkers. Or you might want to include more like cards along the lines of Maze Mind Tome, Search for Iskanta. You have a lot of options for it, but you'll have to lean slightly heavier on those options if you're going to be sleeving up AO for control.
Yeah,
and
definitely can recommend though. Yep.
Speaking of control, next card we have on our list is March of Otherworldly Light. And this is an interesting one because I don't really know if it has a home, but there are those who would argue that it has use in control, sort of controlling lists as a stopgap way to survive an extra turn or two. And I'm just kind of interested to look at the math and how this works, because it's not a bad rate when it comes to stopping a lethal attack, right?
Let's read out the card. So March of Otherworldly Light is X and a white. It's an instant, and this clause is present on all of the marches we're talking about today. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may exile any number of white cards from your hand, and it costs 2 less to cast for each card exiled this way. And then it also will exile target artifact, creature, or enchantment with mana value X or less.
Yeah.
So it can't, by the math, it can't ever trade up in a sense, right? Where you have to pay the white and then the X to exile your target. Notably, it does hit creature lands, which some of these effects have missed historically. So it still is a way to protect yourself from a
Faceless Haven,
or what is it? The Hall of the Storm Giants, it has what Ward 3 or something like that. I don't remember exactly what that card says on it. But the creature lands that white base control can have issue with when it's so wrath heavy, having an instant speed way to remove one of them, and in this case at 1 mana, really is very nice. With the additional context, it's Ward 3. Which, paying only 1 mana to then Ward 3 is about as good as you can hope when it comes to removing something like this with single target removal.
Yeah.
It seems like it's going to be very well positioned, because in the cases where you do need to sort of go up in number, you have the ability with this March text that is constant across the rest of them.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that's going to be interesting for this card is how many times it's played and it gets to target a Stonecoil Serpent.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think specifically this card I think you want this in decks that consistently can use the additional cost factor, but you generally don't want to be using that alternate payment.
Or, you're in a deck that has some tech cards, right? And you look at your, I don't know, maybe you're someone who really, really feels like they need to be playing Deafening Silence. I've seen it happen. I'm not in that mindset, but a card that's very specific like that. You can pitch it to make it easier for you to cast this on your opponent's 4-drop as opposed to it doing nothing.
Yeah, I think that white especially like a Death and Taxes deck, will have a non-zero amount of those effects that in certain matchups you'll say this isn't relevant at all, or it's only like a 1/1 creature because my opponent is going to completely ignore its problems. But I think generally this will be a removal spell that you are not unhappy with playing, but it's going to be middling a lot of times, especially because removal spells like this, you want to be ideally using them on high value targets, and most of the high value targets we have are ones that you're going to need to be paying a lot of mana, and very likely a lot of mana and a card, an extra card, in order to deal with.
Yeah. I think this...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think this card will be interesting. Basically, my primary thing when I look at this card and I try to figure out where I want to see it, if I want to see it anywhere, is a lot of white removal we play in this format. I think that's a big note. Like, a lot of white removal we play in this format is 1 mana, 2 mana, 3 mana, and then control decks will sometimes play the 4 mana one in a cast out or like a Wrath. So you're actually pretty happy to pay at least 3 into this X in a lot of controlling decks, just because this gets rid of Archon of 3 mana. Tap stuff can only play 1 spell a turn.
Archon of Emeria.
Yeah, yes. Archon of Emeria, like, you're actually pretty happy to pay 4 mana into this to kill their Archon of Emeria on end step, or something along those lines. The biggest hurdle I think this card will have to hop is the fact that it can't target planeswalkers.
I mean, I also think when it comes to removal in white, we've also been a little spoiled in what's been coming out recently.
Yeah.
Hitting Swords, and then Declaration in Stone, and then Fateful Absence. As like, I think save Path to Exile, we have the most efficient removal in white that has been printed in the game.
Yeah, we're missing Path, and some would argue me being one among them is Winds of Abandon is one that we're also sort of missing.
Sure, yeah. But yeah, I think that if we didn't just get, 3 insanely efficient removal spells in white fairly recently, that March would be much closer to like all-star or staple status, as is, I think. It's still good, but it's not. It's a card that I will be interested when folks have it in their deck list, and not surprised when they don't have it.
It's a card also that I'm thinking about and looking at as a potential include in if I ever were to build Bant Blink in this year. Sorry, not Bant Blink, Bant Reclamation.
Yeah, Bant Rec is a good one for this. Deck. Yeah. This is much better for like if you have more ramp in your control deck as well, so that you can meet those higher costs in more matchups. Like Seismic was mentioning earlier, like if this has to get Elder Gargaroth, it's likely costing you 4 mana plus a card, and then sometimes they have a counter spell or a blink spell or a protection spell, and you're like, oh god. But if you're playing a green-white control deck or a Bant control deck, and you can very easily close the hurdle on that mana, then, more power to you, right?
Yep. So, yeah. I don't know who.
Speaking of more power to you,
okay.
Our next card is Michiko's Reign of Truth, which is the first double-faced saga we're looking at today. It's 1 and white for a saga. Its first 2 chapters are both target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each artifact and or enchantment you control. And then its third chapter is to exile the saga, then return it to the battlefield under your control as Portrait of Michiko, which is a 0/0 enchantment creature with Portrait of Michiko gets +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment you control. So this is the newest in the line of cards like Nettle Cyst, All That Glitters, and I think we have like 2 others that I'm forgetting the name of. Yeah, Ancestral Mask and but these are
an artifact that does it as well, I think.
No, yeah, was already
no.
The X3. X3.
Yes. Yeah, the X3.
It was from Eldraine. I forget what it's called now.
Yeah, this card has proven, and this effect has proven to be very good in aggressive decks that tend to focus around one or both of those types. And this card, I think, is extremely useful in that regard because it not only acts as an All That Glitters for 2 turns, which can be very effective and doesn't have the downside of being an aura, so it can still have an effect even if you get blown out 1 turn. Then it also plays the role of being a Nettle Cyst unto itself, that again counts itself. So it's going to be very large in decks like in any like white bots deck or Enchantress deck. And I think that this could make Enchantress Stompy push through for last points of damage and get more creatures that are just must blocks, which is where those decks tend to shine.
Mm-hmm. And I do think it's worth mentioning, I was not entirely sure on this card at first when I saw it pop onto cards we're talking about, is that this normally on turn like 3 or 4 for an Enchantress deck or like the enchantment style of deck. This can very easily be +3/+3 or +4/+4, and that's a clock, right? That's on most creatures, that's killing you in 4 hits, so getting your opponent down to half off of this 2 mana card feels pretty good.
Yeah, this card, especially in the early game, I think folks are going to be surprised by how much it pumps for, especially with the amount of creatures we've gotten in this set that are just incidentally enchantments or artifacts. Like when you're going like turn 1 Legion's Landing into Jukai Naturalist into
Lion Sash,
into like Lion Sash, like you play this on like turn 4 and it's giving plus like 4/4 or +5/5, and also, then you kind of just win.
Yeah. Also, Lion Sash is a card that I didn't even notice when spoiler season was happening. I seriously just like I completely blanked on it, and then I actually I learned about it by playing against it in Gladiator, and I was surprised.
You know what? Yeah. All right, sure, throw it in right now.
There's a few cards. I was gonna say there's a couple cards in this set that I think are just like too generically good for us to have an interesting discussion on. Like, and I think Lion Sash and like Blade of the Oni are the 2 ones that like I expressly didn't want to include because they're just like, it's so good, obviously.
You know what? Yeah, let's throw in Lion Sash right now. Why not? You're listening, Effie, right? Throw it in. Yeah, there it is. It's on screen.
Yeah, it's been on.
Perfect.
Lion
Sorry,
Sash,
I missed it getting
pumping
pulled up.
itself for any permanent, even more than its comparison. Scavenging Ooze pumping itself for just creatures.
It pumps on lands.
Yeah, on lands, planeswalkers, artifacts, enchantments, things in this game that aren't instants and sorceries. Hate to break it to you, but they're permanents.
Yeah.
Am I accurate? Is that a true statement? Is someone going to tell me I'm wrong?
Like,
No, you're right.
But like
you can find this with fighter class. There's a reason to play fighter class.
It's
yes, there
I don't
is.
know if it's like a good reason to run fighter class, but it does have its synergies by being just an equipment and
also,
being
just
an
in general
artifact.
having having we keep talking to each other. Just in general, having equipment creatures as a thing you can find with equipment tutors does increase the power of equipment tutors across the entire game, but especially in this format.
It's a cat. It's an effing cat. It's a cat tribal.
How is this card literally everything that I want? Like, it's a robot. It's an equipment. It's a cat, for God's sake.
It also is a counters deck card because it just cares about +1/+1 counters on it.
Yeah.
If my +1/+1 counter deck wasn't exclusively mono green for the purposes of playing the mono green beat sticks, I would definitely be going into white for Lion Sash. And maybe
it also works great with like just decks that mill themselves for a bunch incidentally, like, or against decks that mill themselves incidentally. Like, I saw this the other day face up against a Search for Azcanta. It was glorious, and I started realizing that the opponent was putting the card on top a lot more often.
Because it was a permanent that it, like, you want to throw
because it was a permanent that had text. Like, it wasn't a card that was good in the matchup, but it was a card that, well, I can't let this Lion Sash just keep growing. So they were putting bad cards in their hand in order to not get hurt by a Lion Sash for more.
Yeah.
Also, you know what's insane with this? You get to equip it to another creature, and not only does that creature get +1/+1 for each counter, which doesn't have to be from the ability, just a quick reminder. Also, it means that this Lion Sash dodges wraths. So it dodges wraths.
Creature removal.
Yeah, or targeted creature removal. So it gets around like those decks that really need to like sweep the board to start accessing their graveyard. It's just like versus a Scavenging Ooze, they just have to kill it immediately. So if this Lion Sash can hide on another creature, especially like a hexproof creature, if it's targeted creature removal you're hiding from, it's just insane.
Then
honestly, let's
say they do get rid of the Lion Sash.
You can bring it back.
You can bring it back with a card like. Come on.
Yeah. Yes. I understand. Like the restoration of a Ganjo for 2 and a white. God, this card's dumb too. Okay. This is a 3-mana saga. This is another flip saga. All the sagas in this set are flip cards. Just getting that one out of the way now. For chapter 1, search your library for a basic plains card. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. It's White Ramp.
Well, it's not White Ramp yet.
It's White Ramp. Chapter 2, you may discard a card. When you do, return target permanent card, any permanent, with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. It's White Ramp.
Mm-hmm.
It's now White Ramp, and you can discard. You can reanimate the card you discard.
Yes. Yep. So notably, like, if you are sitting here and like, well, I've got this 3-drop I want to play, and 4-drop I want to play, and it's turn 4. But I also have this 1-drop that would be nice in play at the moment. You can just discard it and bring it in with the ability, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know how many times I've discarded a Ranger class and put it into play?
I assume more than once.
More than once. Yeah. It's been good. It's been real good.
And then
there's even more text though.
What does it flip into?
So step 3, it flips into the other side, and then it's Architect of Restoration. Enchantment creature, Fox Monk. You get to play a Fox Monk in your deck. It's a 3/4, even better. It has Vigilance, even better. And when Architect of Restoration attacks or blocks, create a 1/1 colorless spirit token. What the hell?
The fact that this has Vigilance and an effect on attacking and blocking, just... you're always going to be getting 2 creatures a turn, or your opponent's not attacking you, which both are good.
The King of Restos or something with a slightly different pipeline and the enchantment subtype.
Very slightly different. The bigger difference.
The big difference is that they don't come in attacking or blocking,
and they don't have, and the tokens don't have vigilance. But in exchange, and this one doesn't come up a lot in this format, but it is relevant. The tokens are colorless, which means that they get around protection. So
unless it's protection from colorless,
sure, but they get around color.
Yes, we do.
No, yes,
I'll see the Life's Bounty or whatever the white one is.
Yeah.
Well, no, we have protection. We don't have protection from colorless.
Elsie can, I think, give protection from colorless.
Yes. No, it's color, right? It's just color.
No. Any color or colorless.
Okay, I missed out. I didn't sort anything about Elsie the Life's Bounty.
Elsie the Life's Bounty is just the color of your choice.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay,
We're smart.
Point that I am making by bringing up this card in that part about it is that it can block.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
Point being is that this comes up with stuff like also the Life Bounty as mentioned, and then there is a Sun Gold Sentinel, which is like the 2 primary examples that you see, which gives it. That one gives like a pseudo protection for the purposes of being aggressive.
Yeah, it's protection and everything other than literally saying protection, honestly.
Yeah. No,
yes. Yes.
Only Giver of Runes can give protection from colorless as far as we can find. We have the best people on it. Point being is that Architect of Restoration making colorless tokens can be super important in some matchups. Say if your mono red opponent has decided to play Unchained Berserker, which is a card that sees play in on and off every once in a while because it's just a 3/1 beater. That also gets protection from white, which is a currently very played color. So, but it lets you do things like let this creature attack and then make tokens that just take care of these pro-white threats or just any color
survive
threats.
Against pro-white, more specifically.
Yeah. Survive against pro-white, attack through pro-white. Speaking of surviving, our next card.
Yeah, it's very interesting for a Planeswalker to come in with 3 loyalty and yet be so hard to kill.
So good.
It's the Wandering Emperor.
Yeah.
We are talking about all the Planeswalkers.
We didn't assign a person
I'll talk about it then.
to these ones. Go for it.
Wandering Emperor is 2 white for a legendary Planeswalker. What? Sorry? I Tech is saying something?
That was a ghost.
Ghost.
Okay, I got confused then. Now, the Wandering Emperor is 2 white for a legendary Planeswalker. Flash, as long as Wandering Emperor entered the battlefield this turn, you may activate her loyalty abilities at any time you could cast an instant, which is a very interesting ability. And what it means is that playing this mid-combat, after attacks are declared, effectively puts this to having 2 guaranteed activations before your opponent can interact with it via combat.
Yeah.
So you flash it in, you +1 on a creature that would otherwise be a trade or a chump, and maybe an additional point of power with the ability of +1/+1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature and gaining first strike. Maybe that in combat will just win the combat for you. Another way for it to win combat seems like a very combat-centric Planeswalker, doesn't it?
It's great.
Is,
crazy.
The -1 create a 2/2 white samurai creature token with vigilance. Another way to win combat, -2 exile target tapped creature. You gain 2 life.
Exile
creatures
target
are very
Imrith.
often tapped in combat, aren't they?
They sure are.
So in general, this card is very good at coming in and doing weird things within a combat step, and then unless some sort of card is used to remove it, gonna stick around to your turn.
Also, I just want to give a very quick shout out, Effie, if we could get promo art number 303 on the screen, It's so good.
I think Effie's out for a sec.
All good.
But
we've got a cool art for this card. It's real cool.
Yeah, this card has great art on literally all of its forms. The Wandering Emperor is really good at making sure you can always use it in some way. I am a huge fan of the Samet from Amonkhet, the 5-mana flash creature with double strike. And I love the fact that it has flash, but it always is sad to think, well, if I cast this on the end step, I can't immediately attack with it. Like, so I effectively lose an attack with Samet because it also has haste. You know, sure. I lose an attack with it if I play it at instant speed. With Wandering Emperor, yeah, unless I'm doing it to block in something. Well, and even then, I'm still losing an attack with it because it also has vigilance.
True.
But with Wandering Emperor, it's very nice to see that like extra line of text of if it entered the battlefield this turn, you can activate it at instant speed, so that you are always getting immediate value out of it, and you're not sacrificing any value that you would get from the card by playing it at instant speed. And that makes me very happy to see. And especially when all of them are ways to just immediately win combat. Like,
also, notably, you can still do this on your turn. You can still flash in the Wandering Emperor and give a creature first strike at instant, pardon me, an instant speed on your turn.
Yeah.
Tickle my throat.
This card is... I also think this card's very good against like control, where you're seeing you can say, okay, if you are making a damage-based wrath, I can flash this in, make one of my creatures survive. If the opponent is doing nothing, flashing it in and making a consistent stream of growing samurai is very useful. And when they put down their late game threats, you can still take care of them with a flashing this in and -2. It's great.
Yeah, that's going to be the thing that I think this card is going to be heavily underrated for, and it's going to win a lot more games than people will give it credit, which is enter the battlefield at end of turn, -1/+1, attack with 3/3 first strike, Vigilant Samurai.
Yeah, like, it's... Yeah. This card is so good and so fun.
Notably against counterspell strategies, on their end step, casting a threat like the Wandering Emperor into on your turn, also casting a must counter threat, is usually a very good way to overwhelm a deck where its main removal and main source of interaction is counter magic.
Yeah.
The Wandering Emperor, also a good one to get off of AO the Dawn Sky.
True. Yeah. It just messes with how your opponent works.
Oh, yeah.
Another card that messes with how your opponent's working is March of Swirling Mist. X and a blue for an instant with the same March text we've done before. You may exile any number of blue cards from your hand, and it costs 2 less for each one. And up to X target creatures phase out. This one's interesting. I don't think it's good. And the reason I don't think it's good, I think this effect is one that's very nice, but we've seen this effect a few times before, and the only reason it's been playable is because it's also on a creature that can kill the opponent.
There's a very small subset of decks that I can think of wanting a card like this, and it's like 80% Merfolk Tribal.
Yeah,
and I do think that it's interesting that this card also can phase out your opponent's creatures. I don't think that makes it good, though.
I mean, so can the card that you're thinking of. That's part of why that card's good.
So I think in the case of March of Swirling Mist, you can use it to protect your creatures from removal, but it doesn't allow you to do combat things with them, and they're stuck away for a while. So that's kind of what we're talking about, where it's this weird timing issue where you're just not, you lose it. But it has these really cool lines of interaction where you can use it to stop a bunch of blockers that might be stopping you. Say, you're up against a wall of 5 toughness blockers and you just need to get some damage through. You can pump a bunch of mana into this and get rid of those blockers and attack through.
So chat's sort of mentioning where I think this card fits. This is a weird card in general, and I think, and you were starting to get into it there, UFO, but I think where this card fits in is a sort of deck that we just don't see often. Merfolk was mentioned, but blue aggro in general. This is the sort of card. This is where I want to see that card. Where you talk about Merfolk. There's the 4 mana Merfolk that can tap a team, something like that. This is the type of card that fits into like a sort of blue-red blitz strategy that we just don't see more than we probably should. Also, I just shout outs something that I saw someone do with this card the other day. They had a Crackling Drake and a bunch of blue spells in hand. They got to tap all my blockers. I could block their Crackling Drake and pump it like 4 times with this card, and it was insane.
I do want to say this card is weird, but possibly okay in like blue-green turns.
Yeah, the thing to remember about the card especially is that while it is, you might look at this card and you may look at a card like Sleep, which is a good comparison for the stop blockers bit, and say, well, it's not as efficient as Sleep. It doesn't keep things down for a full turn, that sort of thing. But the hybrid aspect of it, where it could be both protection against a wrath for your own creatures, or a way to push damage through for the creatures that you have, like that duality of what it does is pretty nice. I think and then looking at it in the context of, say, this thing
like a Time Walks deck.
Yeah, in the context of a Time Walks deck or a deck that's like wanting some fogs, it can be an interesting fog.
This is a fog that gets around Stomp, which is honestly a big deal, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
It can be a fog that gets around Stomp. It can also be a fog that you use in like a more creature-heavy version of blue-green turns, which I think is kind of the current version.
Yeah.
Where it also still can be used to protect your threats. Like if you have, I don't know, some birds that you got off of an Alrund's Epiphany, you probably still want to keep those around no matter what your opponent's doing. So March of Swirling Mist, I think, is oddly playable ? In blue-green turns, like specifically. And if we ever like have a more widely played blue aggro deck, it might see play there as well.
Play more blue-red blitz. That deck just keeps getting better.
Notably, though, this card doesn't work in the context that I kind of first looked at it in, which is in the context of control, because using it to survive an extra turn means that you still can't survive with a Wrath because you have phased all their creatures out and they do not die to your Wraths anymore.
This card's not good in control.
It's a little... There might be an interesting circumstance where it's good in control, but only if you're combo control.
If we got...
even in combo control, you're likely going to be in colors where you could play a Haze of Pollen, and that would just be probably better in the deck.
Haze of Pollen doesn't beat certain things, and this is 1 pip in a color that you're primarily playing. Like, this is 1 blue pip, and that's much easier for combo control decks to access while still setting up. While, like, a Haze of Pollen, which, it's interesting. That is a much more nuanced conversation that, like, getting into here, we just start being like, it's like, well, you play this, or you play, like, a double pip card in one of your other colors, and then you, like, but what's that color doing for us otherwise? Like, you can cast this and still cast the DT and then pact Oracle People still.
We're going to start arguing about which type of apple is the most apple-y.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. Like, that's what it sort of gets down into, and it's really just going to be your mileage may vary on that point.
Speaking of mileage, mileage has to do with cars, and you know what's amazing card?
Thank you, Science Make, for picking that up.
It's Mindlink Mech, 2 and a blue for a 4/3 artifact vehicle. It has flying, and when it becomes crewed for the first time each turn until end of turn, it becomes a copy of target non-legendary creature that crewed it this turn, except it's a 4/3 flyer vehicle with flying still. And it has crew 1. Why is it crew 1? It's so easy.
What cards are you excited to crew this with the most?
Hellrider.
Honestly, any creature. Like,
well, no, I'm talking about, like, I understand that it's a 4/3 flyer that crews for 1. Like, that's cool. That's great.
Yeah.
But if we're making use of the clone aspect of it, right? Now what are we looking to use here?
Hellrider.
Are there any, like, 1 power things? Hellrider you just attack with anyway.
But then the card that kills them double kills them. I'm kidding.
But so funny. Hellrider does double the triggers for that. I honestly didn't have any list of, like, creatures I want to crew with this, because if I did, it would just be creatures with, like, most creatures with effects on them.
Elder Gargaroth.
Elder Gargaroth is not actually one I want to crew with this. Because I'd rather just...
It gives your mind link deck vigilance.
Yeah, does get you can all with the keyword abilities of the creature that you tap.
Actually, I do like crewing Gargaroth with this, because then I can attack with the mech, get a 3/3 that can then crew the mech again.
Exactly.
On blocks.
Alan's got a very good point. Very good point.
Yeah.
Swift Vindicator.
The card that I'm constantly trying
trample
to...
Flying 4/3.
Like, I want to tap a Battle Mammoth in my control opponent's upkeep when I know what they have in hand. Like, they need targeted removal. I want to get 2 cards off this Battle Mammoth. Like, I want to copy a Beast Whisperer with this and just pop off.
Okay.
Like,
you may be arguing me into playing this card in Paradox for some reason.
Honestly, the card's not bad in Paradox. Like, you
Paradox,
copy.
You
can't copy Captain Sisay, but you can copy.
Yes, you can.
No, you can't. Legendary.
It's legendary. It has to be non-legendaries.
Oh,
but
copy.
Why does it stop us from googling ourselves? I want to give my Captain Sisay haste. That would honestly be a really useful thing. But
you copy your Faber Elder. It's just as good.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, so you get insane. Yeah, you can do this with Mana Dorks, which not only gets you an extra copy of a Mana Dork for cases of, like, Paradorks, but also lets you turn creatures that are bad at being creatures into 4/3 flyers. Like...
Mm-hmm.
Man, you know what's actually insane about this for Paradorks? If you copy either a Sanctum Weaver or what's the 1/1 that taps for 2 if you control a 4-power creature?
Elysian Caryatid.
So it makes both of those turn into 1 creature that adds 1 mana into 2 creatures that add 4 mana, which is actually kind of insane for that like for what that deck needs for mana requirements.
Yep.
Yeah,
I still need to crack the Sanctum Weaver. I haven't spent the rare wild card on it yet.
Yeah, so
it's worth noting that you do have to tap the creature, so it's not always going to be this insane, huge effect, but it is still, like, good. Like,
that's interesting. How does
I don't know how it works
work with this?
I have no clue.
Fabro Elder doesn't set power toughness.
Yeah, it's just +1
in fact, Fabro Elder becomes huge.
Attacking Fabro Elder with Mind Link Mech, just with these 2 cards in play, makes it a 7/6. Yeah, 7/6 with Vigilance, and also taps for 3 mana.
Whee! One card Vigilance. That's kind of interesting is Crystalline Giant or Mecha Godzilla, where you can use this to over time get more and more ability counters on Mind Link Mech.
Yeah.
Allowing it to just become an insane creature no matter what you put into it. And
also,
again, this card's just good no matter what you put into it.
I don't know the answer to that, Dan, kids. They're asking about how it works with creatures that are actually power and toughness setters, like, say, the not glyph that we got recently.
It's a 4/3. It says, except it's a 4/3 on the card.
Yeah.
So it replaces those clauses.
I want to say it's a 4/3. I wouldn't be super surprised if it stayed being its set power and toughness, because
the word
characteristic defining abilities are dumb.
Yes.
Yeah. The word accept is there, which makes me believe it's a 4/3.
If I may bring up an edge case among edge cases.
Of course.
If you crew Mindlink Mech with an army and then amass,
you can choose to put the counters on the mech.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can do the same if you amass while you have a Faceless Haven in play.
Sure. But notably, this could add... Now, this is a ridiculous line of play. But if you crew it with an army, and then you use Widespread Brutality...
Of course.
You're doing minimum 6 to every other creature in play.
Of course.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And you get to keep the original army, right?
Yes.
Yes, non-army.
Yeah. I've been meaning to play Widespread Brutality. You've given me a reason to play it again. I'm in. Let's talk about the next card, though, because we are an hour into this and we've only talked about 7 cards.
Yeah, that's the point. Anyway.
8.
Speaking of...
Speaking of great cards...
and his army.
Yeah. Speaking of
Bullets,
yeah, there you go. Got there.
Has found a new omnipotent being to supplant himself in front of, in the form of Jin-Gitaxias. Showing up in this case as a 2 blue legendary planeswalker Tezzeret with 4 loyalty when it comes in, has a static ability. The first activated ability of an artifact you activate each turn costs 2 less to activate. Just flat. Could make an activation cost 0. +1, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards unless you discard an artifact card. That's a card we know. -2, target artifact becomes an artifact creature. If it is in the vehicle, it has base power and toughness 4/4. That does not say until end of turn. -6, you get an emblem with whenever an artifact you control becomes tapped, draw a card.
Yes.
That emblem is kind of scary.
Good. This, okay, so I've been talking about this card a bunch because this card lets you make Guild Globe into ramp by 2.
Yeah,
yeah, but then you're playing Guild
in general, it makes any of those eggs but
you're playing
very good.
I get to play a Guild Globe on turn 2, play something. I get to play this out, and then next turn Bolsus, and they'll guaranteed because this is Guild Globe.
I mean, I agree that it's cool.
Yes.
I think I would target more this -2 ability, sort of perpetually animating things that have various reasons to be animated. Because let's say you're playing, you decide you're playing blue-white vehicles, because that's kind of like one of the big archetypes from this set. You can play the Ox Plow, whatever it is called, and -2 on it with this.
Yeah, and it's permanently a creature.
Yeah, permanently a 3/6. It doesn't modify the power and toughness if it's a vehicle.
Tezzeret is so good. And it has different bread and butter abilities depending on what you're doing with it. So, for example, if I'm looking at this in Artifact Paradox, I'm really looking at this static and this +1 that lets me cycle through some of my deck, which is super important when you're in the end game of I have everything I need to win except one of my payoffs. let me find, let me dig for a Sararak or dig for, any of these cards any of the cards that let me go infinite. The static lets me, again, make these eggs turn into actual ramp. It makes things like Prophetic Prism just tap for mana.
And then it also has the fact of if you're sitting here doing kind of nothing with your opponent, you can just turn some random artifact, Traveler's Amulet or whatever, that doesn't matter, into a 4/4 that's attacking them for the rest of the game.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Antiquities War, which would, after a couple of turns, turn all of your artifacts into 5/5s for a turn. Mm-hmm. And that was just, usually a countdown to you're dead unless you have Settle. And this Tezzeret's kind of similar, except it's much more of a slow burn, and I think that's better, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, the craziest part about this card for me is that it just Faithless Lootings.
Yeah.
Like that +1 with no other synergy at all in your deck in any way, shape, or form, it Faithless Lootings.
Yeah, I think this Tezzeret is very good, and it's a very good pushed 4-mana Tez.
Speaking of pushed 4-mana cards, our next card.
Thank you.
Is Hitsugu Devouring Chaos. For 3 and a black, we get a 4/4 legendary creature Ogre Demon, and it has an activated ability that says, for black, you can sacrifice a creature and you can scry 2. Great. You get some card advantage, you get to look at cards, you get to sacrifice creatures that are either dying already or you want to sacrifice just because they have a good death effect or they're going to be brought back by another effect. Like, I got to set up a game where I had a Hitsugu Luris and I think it was a 3-bit Inspector, and I was just like sacrificing it to scry 2 every turn and playing it again, and that was a fun loop to set up. And then that scry 2 combos with this activated ability, which for 2 and a red, you can tap it and you can exile the top card of your library. You may play the card this turn. When you exile a non-land card this way, Hitsugu Devouring Chaos deals damage equal to the exiled card's mana value to any target. FE doing a great job showing you how many times I think I'm going to have to buy this card, because all of these look great in paper, which is so bad for my wallet.
I would note,
yes,
I've played against this card, I think 3 times in draft. I've beaten it twice, but not because I should have, because my opponent playing it just didn't seem to understand how it worked.
Yeah.
One of the times they just didn't activate the ability for any reason, which, I was at like 3. If they hit anything, I would have died. And the other one was someone who was deciding... hot tip, don't activate Hitsugu in your upkeep.
No. Draw first.
No.
Unless you know the top card of your deck. Just draw.
Yeah, which,
like,
in the grand scheme of, but what if I draw a big thing for my first draw for turn? If I instead activate it and hit it, then I would feel stupid. But the same reasoning applies to the second card afterwards.
Yeah.
Unless you know the top card of your library, activate Hitsugu when it's best for you to do so after you have all the information in the turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you can get to a point where you can activate this ability, it's just very good to deal potentially a lot of damage, to give you card advantage. It doesn't care whether you cast the card or not in order to deal that damage.
Yeah.
Like,
if this was worded like
good.
Shana Torture Defiance, where you had to choose to not cast the card to do the damage, it would still be very good, but it would definitely be a very different choice.
Yeah. I also want to dispel a myth about this card. You do not need a lot of mana to start activating this and feel good about it. As soon as you have 6 mana in play, start activating before you play your land, just in case you hit a land. You want to be able to get the land if you need to, but just like as soon as you start having 6 mana, just start flipping stuff off the top. Like,
honestly, even if you hit I will do this as soon as I have 4.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if you hit something
right.
You can't cast. Are you going to be actually sad about it because you've
a lot of the time
hit
you're like
something to kill either your opponent or a creature that they control?
Yeah.
If you can't use the card you exiled, you're still happy because you got a lightning bolt that you didn't have to spend a card for.
Yeah, and secondarily, I like to dispel the myth that you have to activate that ability at all. It's very good. It is a very good ability. But sometimes the fact that the card exists on that activation, people will play around it in a very weird way, and then you just get to attack them with the 4/4.
Or they'll
especially when they're somewhat close to 10, but not near that. Yeah, against Joker Boney specifically.
Right. It's like, oh god, I'm at 14. They have 7 mana.
They hit and then play second right off of Hitsugu.
I have done it. It wasn't good enough. They had what's it called in play? 4 mana Redain, the flip side of Redain. They had this flip side of Redain in play. I was very sad.
Shield or whatever.
Yeah, I almost lived the dream.
Yeah, this card's just very fun and
also,
good.
Hitsugu.
Yeah.
Hitsugu second right. Was history when original Kamigawa was printed.
Yeah,
right?
he sort of. Heartless Hitsugu is a card. He wasn't history. He was just
it's current events in original Kamigawa. He then ate a demon, which caused him to become a demon.
Yeah,
which means he's immortal.
Yeah.
Lore.
So Hitsugu just has been around for the last several thousand years? Question mark.
Yeah, because he became a demon.
1200.
Yeah, at least 1200. He became a demon. That's you kill a demon, you become a demon. That was the second right. Was him destroying the demon.
Yeah. Just more talking about I'm surprised Hitsugu doesn't. I'll say this. The stories that Hitsugu could tell, I guess is the best way to word that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's why he's exiling cards and casting them. He's telling you a story by punching you in the face.
Speaking of exiling cards,
yes.
Our next card is March of Wretched Sorrow, which is X into black for an instant. It has the same March clause except for exiling black cards, and it costs 2 less for each one. And then it deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, and you gain X life. I think, this is generally going to be better than Erebos' Intervention, and I've always been a very big fan of Erebos' Intervention.
Play both.
Notably, Erebos' Intervention has -X/-X, which gets around some of the indestructible effects that exist in the format. But March of Wretched Sorrow targets planeswalkers.
Play both.
So
you should probably be playing both. But man, being able to hit planeswalkers off of March of Wretched Sorrow just gives me so much joy, because I know I'm going to be in a case, even when I'm not willing to exile cards from my hand, where I'm staring down a 4 loyalty planeswalker, and I'm okay just spending the turn killing that, and still gaining life. You also have the fact, off of that.
And when I'm playing planeswalkers against, say, a blue-black control deck, I'm much less frugal with the loyalty of them, because I know removal spells in black that hit planeswalkers are just straight up kills, no matter what the loyalty is.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So you're more likely to be able to hit and bring down a planeswalker that has 2 loyalty on it.
Yeah.
This card's great. Even if it didn't have its cost reduction clause. Sometimes you'll use that because you need to. You're generally not going to want to, but it's just gravy on an already good card.
I actually think that this is the card that is in our format that is most likely to see the cost reduction used on it, because of the fact that hand attack exists as a Thoughtseize, IOK, Duress, Dragged Fuge. Yeah. There are times where you're just in top deck mode with your opponent. You're just especially with the fact that this gains life, and you know that it's just I just need to gain as much life as possible. I'll pitch this Thoughtseize I'm not going to cast. I'll pitch this I'll pitch this Cry of the Carnarium that's outlived its usefulness, or I'm going to Control Mirror. It's okay, cool. I'm just putting 17 mana into this march to gain 17 life.
Yeah, or if I need to hit 0 cards in hand for an Asylum Visitor.
Yeah, exactly.
Things that. Yeah, there's a surprising amount of versatility to being able to get rid of cards that you don't want to cast.
Yeah, this one I think is the most likely in Gladiator with there's this time I discarded my Llanowar Elves to this unplayable march. Don't worry about it. This is the one that's most likely to actually happen, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of red cards, our next card.
Speaking of red cards, our next card is Goro, Disciple of Ryusei. If someone hasn't already, someone should honestly ping Mink. This card's great. It's
Mink Strella. Do you think Mink Strella knows about the new Goblin? The set's been out for a few weeks. I don't know if they know about it yet. They played Zombies yesterday. Yet. They probably don't know. Go at them.
So 1 in a red for a 2/2 legendary creature, Goblin Samurai. It
Great
has
type line.
I love this set. It has an ability for a single red to give creatures you control haste until end of turn. And then for 3 red, you can create a 5/5 red dragon spirit creature token with flying. And you can only activate this if you control an attacking modified creature. I think this is the first time that we've actually seen modified in the set review.
Yep.
So just to clarify, equipment, auras that you control, and counters are modifications. So, and there's a surprising amount of things that are modified. If a creature happens to enter with counters, it's modified. If you're playing Bone Splitter or another card we'll talk about. Actually, are we talking about it?
No,
we're not.
We're not.
It's too generically good.
Yeah.
If you're playing Bone Splitter or Eater of Virtue, those will modify. You don't have to do extra work to get modified in this format, for the most part. And also, Goro is good enough that you don't need to activate that last ability.
Though, if you are planning on activating the last ability, make sure you read all of the last ability.
It has to be attacking. That's a big part.
Well, it has to be attacking. You also have to control a modified creature, which an
attacking modified creature. Important.
Yeah, you have to control the creature that is attacking. Among the creatures that are attacking has to be a modified creature. I misplayed pretty hard with this, thinking I could just activate it once it attacked, and it just wasn't the case. And I made a bunch of bad attacks, thinking I'd get a 5/5 to attack with, and then I died. Still won the game. So I still won the match, but I lost that game because I treated it like a Dragonkin Berserker, and I'm gonna be honest with you, Dragonkin Berserker is still better.
Yeah, so I want to talk about this card, In the light of red decks, Dragonkin Berserker is better. I think that this card is interesting because of the creatures you control gain haste clause.
Yes.
Which can allow this to be an interesting tool for creature combo decks that need creatures to tap.
Yeah.
I'm still playing in Gruul mid-range. I think the haste activation is still useful. I need to get better at understanding that I need to read all of the new cards before I sit there and step on my own foot.
Yeah, all these cards are small paragraph, small short stories now at this point.
Yes.
It's a little insane.
Goro is a card I don't like I don't think it's that great to compare it to Dragonkin Berserker. I think that if you're playing mono red, you don't need this card because you already have better twos and more than half your stuff already has haste. You don't need this card in mono red. But in a deck where, especially Gruul, which has very big things that don't naturally have haste, being able to grant those haste, like, even if you have really great cards that do have haste, you're going to have ones that don't. And so being able to give like a Elder Gargaroth haste, or being able to give, why is the only creature that I can think of Elder Gargaroth and Phyrexian Obliterator
specifically
right now?
Ilharg for me. You give Ilharg haste and you put a Golta in with it, you attack for that's actually 20 right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you can just give random things haste, and a lot of creatures that don't have haste have ways that if they attack or if they are on the board for, like, if you can get as much value as you can from the card the first turn that they're there, they become really good. And I think not only in a combo application, but also just in a general, like, mid-range, but sometimes like explosive plays, in, for example, Gruul Legends, I tend to get
what's that card?
To turns where I can triple, quadruple, quintuple spell, and being able to end that with just, and I'll pay a single red on top of that, and all of these creatures I just played can attack.
What's that spell that gives all of your creatures riot? The instant enchantment.
Rhythm of the Wilds.
Yeah,
Rhythm of the Wilds. Like, Rhythm of the Wild is has historically been like the sort of weird card that people have played a bunch and then played less, and then played a bunch and played less. But
it's gotten better now, honestly.
It's much better now, I think.
Yeah.
Especially so long as people keep wanting to interact with Gruul decks via counter magic, which is just not the right way to interact with Gruul decks in general, but that's a different story entirely.
Big.
Like,
they just reprinted this? What? They just reprinted this?
In the commander decks, because it makes all of your creatures modified.
Yeah, fair enough.
Also, it makes all your creatures modified, which, if you choose counter, if we want to talk about Goro, that's a great way. Like, play Goro with Within the Wild. Now you have a modified creature.
And Goro is just very fun in decks that can do like explosive plays, but are not even necessarily lacking, but want ways to utilize those cards much faster. Speaking of utilizing cards quickly, our next card is March of Reckless Joy.
Yes.
March of Reckless to draw 2 cards.
Yeah, March of Reckless Joy is X and a red for an instant. It has the same March text on it, except with this time with red cards. And you exile the top X cards of your library. You may play up to 2 of those cards until the end of your next turn. I think this card's interesting. I haven't thought of a space where it's like better than other cards that we already have.
I want to shout out something that I miss about this card. You do not have to choose when you're casting the spell which spells you're casting.
Yes, you just have a repository of options available to you. And you can just do it whenever. Notably, also, I think you were going to say the play aspect means that lands are within the realm of possibility. But
I was just going to say this is red divination.
It's weird that they worded it like this, although there's not really a way to word it. This doesn't work with channel effects.
Doesn't work with channel.
You can't channel cards from exile.
You can't channel it. Yeah, can't activate abilities. I love this art, by the way. This art's great. I love the face on that guy. Like, that is Reckless Joy.
The dragon dog.
That is Reckless Joy right there on that face.
Yeah, I think
can I get a cut out of that face? I need that. That's great.
That should be a new emote. Like,
I'll do it. I have emote slots.
I love this card as like a replacement for one of the many like tormenting voices that we have. And that's what its base is that, you pay 1 mana. you exile a red card from your hand. So it's more constrained in what you can get rid of, and it's a worse constraint. But you do get, a Tormenting Voice for 1 mana, or you get
you're talking about
a red Divination, at instant speed. Like
you're talking
it's
previously,
a little
Joker,
bit better
about the interaction with the Martyrs and like a Crackling Drake.
Yeah.
This
is also pretty
Drake
good.
Even better. Where, let's say you marked a Reckless Joy for like X equals 7 or 8 because you exiled 3 or 4 cards from your hand that are red.
Whee!
And then you exile 8 more cards from top of your library. In addition to drawing all those cards.
Yeah.
Effectively, right? You have the option to do that.
Right.
Your Crackling Drake is now probably +5 power on average.
At least. Yeah. So shoutouts to Blue Red Blitz. Play that deck more. Honestly, the biggest thing I want to talk about with this card is just like we have a glut of draw spells that exist in the format that are playable, that are good playable draw spells. We have a lot of those. This one gives selection in a way that we don't really see with draw spells, while not being restrictive in when you cast it.
Or being blue.
Yeah, or being blue, which is also important, right? Like this is a draw spell you can cast when you have red, blue, and still hold up counterspell, which is really important, right?
Or like that's when you're not playing blue.
Sure, right? Like if you're playing, I'm playing this in red white. It's been great there. Red black.
I should play this in red white.
Yeah, play it in red white. I'm also playing it in red black, even though I have access to the one that we just got, Blood Pact. That's what it's, Blood Pact.
Yes.
Yeah. Even though we just got access, like just more, right? Like it's an instant speed divination out. That is the base case I see playing this card in, is instant speed divination, and that is a great case to be in, even if you have to cast the cards pretty instantaneously. Like just in other decks, right? Like this is like another storm. This is another storm setup card. Like you basically get to do what's that card? Galvanic Relay or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you get to do what that card would want to do. Which, like, on end step, after you've, like, maybe memory lapsed their hate piece or whatever card they were going to use to win the game, you get to, like, march for 4, see if you can win, cycle through your deck some more. Like,
they didn't bring Galvanic Relay into this format, did they?
No, they didn't. No, they did not.
Okay. Because if they did, I would have been very surprised to have not seen it yet.
No, yeah. We didn't get it, but it's worth mentioning that this does a similar thing as that, because it's a good we talked about.
I was more like, they gave us a lot of Modern Horizon cards. Did we get that card? I just didn't notice.
Yeah,
that happens a few times every once in a while we're talking about things. And sometimes I just didn't notice.
Right, totally. Yeah, so I don't expect this card to see a lot of play, but I think where it will see play, it'll be much better than people expect it to be. And just so you like, respect the fact that you may just end up being in a deck where it's like, I am very hungry for a certain type of mana, and even though that color has access to draw spells or draw effects, I just need 1 red pip, draw some cards, look at some cards, like especially if you're playing like a red-green lands strategy. Let's say if you see if you cast this for like 3 or 4 on end step, like you're basically just casting Empty the Wilds. Like, this just gets to be another Empty the Wilds in that situation. You don't get another land drop, but if you got to do this on end step, that's even better. You get to untap with all your mana and cast the cards that matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This card...
Escape to the Wilds. By the way,
Escape to the Wilds. This card works. It will be... And I think thinking about it as, like, X capped at 2, like, is also just, like I think that's a very good plan.
Like, at the same time, though, right? Like, you draw this as your 1 spell, and you're like, well, I could cast this for, like, 4 on my turn right now, but I think it's better off if I do it for 7 mana on my opponent's end step here. Yeah, and then have a really good turn on my next turn.
Yeah,
and it is, if you do cast on your opponent's end step, you can only you have that one turn, that one next turn to use those cards. It with the way it's worded.
Yeah, until end
and
of your
even
next
if you
turn.
like
So
cast it for like 4 and look at 3 cards, like
that's still good.
Yeah, it's still good.
Okay.
So moving on to our next card. It's not much of a transition here, but it's the Flower Spirit, Thundering Raiju. 2
Look at all those
red.
flowers.
All those flower.
Speaking of reckless,
for a creature spirit, 3/3 with a haste, and whenever Thundering Raiju attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then Thundering Raiju deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of modified creatures you control that aren't Thundering Raiju. This card is great. It is attacks as a 4/4. If it isn't the only thing in play. It will grow other things if you find a need to grow other things at any given time. Like oftentimes I find myself attacking with this, making it like a 4/4, because usually 4/4 is where trades become a little less easy to do. Like you can often trade with a 3/3 pretty easily, but a 4/4 is a little bit harder.
Yeah.
And then subsequent attacks are making the rest of my creatures better at slamming in.
Yeah.
Back this up like a lightning bolt, and you're in Gravy Town.
This is the Hellrider of the counters deck. Like, it's will
second Hellrider for the counters deck.
Yeah, it's like,
or you don't play it in a counters deck. You can just play it in a Gruul deck that can, that likes to be aggressive, and like, you'd be surprised. Like, there's some incidental counters in the Gruul deck, but also just like it by itself, it's a growing threat that you really can't ignore. Like,
this grew by Ascendant Pack Leader before attacking. Oh god. Right, like,
this card is a card that, like, if it only grew itself, it would still be
good.
I would be like, this might see play because it can buff anything, because it looks at your entire board, even when this is in the worst case scenario of it's the only creature. You're still not unhappy with drawing this. You know, it's still a 4/4 with haste at bare minimum.
Yeah, it's also tied now for most potential damage with minimum board for a red 4-drop, where this Hellrider and Hazoret all can deal 5 damage very easily on 4. Because Hellrider, if you control one other creature, that's 5 damage without considering anything else. Thundering Raiju, deal 5 damage, 5 damage just without anything else. So it gets to fit into that echelon, which is very interesting to talk about, because like we just don't have many 4-drops that do that, right? Like we get it every once in a while, but like this may even unseat Hellrider for some builds of mono red, or sorry, not Hellrider, Hazoret.
I mean, I think Hazoret's been unseated for a while. That's my own opinion.
In my opinion, Hazoret's been unseated this whole time.
I think people should be playing him more, but that's a different point.
I really dislike Hazoret.
Time. I think that you will also dislike this card. I don't know. Maybe.
Actually, I quite like this card, and I think UFO does as well.
This is definitely my personal favorite from this set, Invoke the Ancients. 1 green, 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 green. 4 green pips and 1 generic mana for a sorcery. And that says, create 2 4/5 green spirit creature tokens. For each of them, put your choice of a vigilance counter, a reach counter, or a trample counter on it. So, there's a lot of very interesting play patterns here. Most notably, something I've found when I've been playing it is usually you're putting the same counter on both of these tokens.
Yeah, that's fair. Depends on what you're doing.
I'm like, okay, I need reach creatures, 2 reach tokens. Or,
I think also
this board's at parity, 2 vigilance tokens. I actually don't use the trample tokens as much as I've used reach and vigilance, both in my time playing it in Limited and playing it in Gladiator.
I don't think the trample tokens are like, the trample counters are actually like a good choice most of the time, unless you specifically see a need to use them.
You're up against a bunch of 1/1s.
And I think in a vacuum, I would tend to want, like, if I'm playing this in the same vein as I'm playing like Vivian Monsters Advocate, I I want one of these to have reach and one of these to have vigilance, because I'm the kind of person who cannot get blown out by another rankle.
Yeah.
Yep. There's a reason that unless I'm against like specifically mono green, my first Vivian Monster Advocate token is always a reach beast.
Literally always has reach.
Always reach beast, unless you're not playing reach beast. I have been always burned by playing reach beasts, where there are times where if I had trample beasts, I would have just won.
Always reach beasts.
But, you know, that's a different conversation. Invoke the Ancients also is really interesting in that it's a really good regrowth target. Because of the fact that it's 5 mana and it is so overstated when it comes to just like the raw stats that it puts into play. Spending 7 mana to regrowth and then cast Invoke the Ancients again is still on rate.
And 5 green pips, but yes.
I mean, I'm talking about mono green. Why?
Yeah, if you're in mono green,
that's worrying about green pips at this point.
Yeah, if you're Faceless Haven in play, like get 3 colorless
I personally
lands.
don't play Faceless Haven in mono green because I rather would have my my triple green pips more active on 3 and 2.
No, that's fine. That's fair. I'm making a joke here.
Yeah, I know. I think
my favorite thing about the invokes is that they do allow you for one Faceless Haven. You know.
Yes.
Everybody gets one.
I'm just more saying, I think you hit on a opinion I have about mono green specifically, which is that particular archetype is so pip heavy that I don't think you actually are afforded any colorless utility land.
Yeah, so you're more on board with playing like old growth troll every single time on turn 2, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's fair.
And so so Invoke the Ancients, I know this isn't Gladiator, but I had a limited game where I believe I played this spell 4 times. Played it once naturally. Then I used a card we're going to be talking about a little bit later, the Sky Turtle, to regrow it and play it again. Then I regrew the Sky Turtle and used that Sky Turtle to regrow it and play it again. And I had the ability to do it again, but they conceded. I wonder why.
Yeah, and because this is such a good regrowth target, I'm kind of considering this for like blue-green turns. Where it is it's 2 huge bodies that if I have, a way to recur regrowths consistently, it can just become an amount of value that's almost equivalent to, just getting an extra turn to do it again and win that way.
Speaking of tumbling value, our next card.
Hello and welcome back to the Gladiator podcast. Joker is out today, which means I'm doing the introductory stuff, and we are picking up from kind of where we left off last week.
Yeah, we had a bit of Gremlins got into the into the text stream and just kind of stopped everything for a little bit there. But
yeah, sorry about that. I forgot to sleeve my release to Gremlins. It happens to us all.
Speaking of Violet Blight, we are down 1 Joker Boney, but we are back up to our regular amount of Violet Blight.
Hi.
I'm Seismic Lawns, by the way.
I'm UFO.
And as mentioned, I'm Violet. I now have a different name. Again. Yeah, that's me.
And
also, Nintendo stole it for Pokemon, but
where in Pokemon is it?
The new generation.
It's the title of the new gen.
It's Scarlet and Violet.
I shows how informed I am.
And we're going to say goodbye to this bit, and we're also going to say hello to the card we're going to talk about first, which is Farewell.
Right, this is my job. Farewell is a sorcery for 4 white, which says stop what you're doing and go play Celeste. It's a great platformer. But this card lets you choose one or more of exiling all artifacts, all creatures, exiling all enchantments, and exiling all graveyards, which I believe is slightly new templating, or I might just be forgetting completely. I feel like it used to be all cards from graveyards, but I don't know. I might just be a boomer at this point.
That is a fairly new change.
Okay. It also has new templating, and like previously it could say choose any number, or
maybe. Like, I feel like this is the same on Casualties of War.
Yeah, I guess Casualties of War. I'm thinking more back to the ones where you have like 5 options and you can only choose like 3 of them.
Right. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, this card is 6 mana for a board wipe, which is not ideal for sure. Like at this point in the format, we have plenty at 4, a decent number at 3 as well, and like if you really want to stretch, you probably play up to like a Doomscar and maybe a Fumigate.
People are doing that right now.
Yeah, people are playing multiple 5 mana wraths.
Really?
If you count Doomscar as a 5 mana wrath.
Yeah, Doomscar is like iffy.
So like 4 mana on average.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The control decks are notably running one non-Doomscar 5-drop wrath. And I think the format is starting to slow down a little bit. Because we've gotten some really good control tools and we've gotten really good mid-range tools this set. So I think if this kind of trajectory keeps going, I think we could get to the point where like a 6 mana wrath is viable, and this is absolutely the go-to pick for a 6 mana wrath.
Yeah, for sure.
Though it does actually have some competition in the Blood on the Snow option that exists. Blood on the Snow having additional different utility from Farewell, where it can hit all planeswalkers and also has that reanimation aspect to it with the snow mana.
Yeah.
I think they remember about Farewell, and this is probably not as relevant in Gladiator specifically, but it is worded, and I imagine because it is in this way worded, it is worded such that you do actually cleanly kill a lot of like reconfigure things that would otherwise be somewhat protected from wraths.
Right, because you do exile. Yeah.
Yeah, so like you got a Lion Sash on some creature that's making everything a problem. You can kill all creatures and also all artifacts.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think the artifacts, enchantments, and graveyard part really helps to take care of one of the biggest problems with board wipes being that if you are on like a control mirror, you don't want to see your board wipes almost ever until like 1 or 2 in the extremely late game when both players have put down threats. Farewell is still good in those matchups and in the situations where like your opponent doesn't have a creature on the battlefield, and you can still use this to your advantage to get rid of things like Midnight Clock, to get rid of Search for Azcanta,
Wilderness Reclamation. This is as like in a control mirror, you still don't really love this. It's like 6 mana at sorcery speed is always awkward. But like this is a way for you to be able to catch up if your opponent's built a board presence that isn't creature based, which can be very useful.
Yeah. I love the versatility of this card. And although I think we are a little bit too fast for 6 mana wraths right now, if we get better like mid-range tools, I think we could be in a world where it's okay to play a like 1 6 mana wrath as a treat.
Yeah.
Another card that gives you cards as a treat is our next card, Discover the Impossible.
Yes.
Yes.
So I'll talk on this a second, okay? Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, so Discover the Impossible is 2 and a blue for an instant. It says, look at the top 5 cards of your library, exile one of them face down, and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. You may cast the exile card without paying its mana cost if it's an instant spell mana value 2 or less. If you don't, put the card into your hand. This is an interesting sort of dig option, where you're not really going to be getting, you're never going to be getting card advantage from it. But I kind of like it better than some of the selection that you see in the form of, say, the Thirst for Knowledge variants. Because while, yes, you don't get as high selection, you see deeper, and it also isn't card draw, which does matter in some cases. The fact that this isn't card draw is really what intrigues me about it.
Yeah, this card's really interesting, especially because it digs so deep for a card.
Yeah. Sorry, you go first.
Like, even if you completely ignore the cast a free instant that's 2 or less, for most of the time, this is still a better dig than a lot of the other cards that we see at 3 mana. Being able to look 5 cards deep for an answer for 3 mana is not something we see often.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not even sure how many. I haven't done the math or anything. I imagine most decks would be that do want to play this are probably 10 to 12, maybe a bit more as far as instants that get cast off of this. I'm not entirely sure, because we have a few decent blue cantrips at this point. You probably get to hit some of the cheaper counter spells, maybe some removal spells, if assuming you're in multiple colors that have Doom Blades or stuff. I'm not really sure though.
Yeah, I definitely think personally that this card is designed with a little bit of fear in their hearts, because I fully believe that they could have just said instant or sorcery, mana value 2 or less, and it would still be a fine card.
Yeah, I think they were thinking about older formats with that in mind, because
you don't want to discover the impossible into a Ancestral Vision.
Oh, yeah, I don't think you want that for formats like Modern. I
want that for formats like Modern.
I also want that. But yeah, it makes sense.
But Discover the Impossible, I see this as a really good dig spell that can sometimes cast a different spell for free. And what I want to be doing with this is I want to be casting this either in response to people's spells, just in case I hit a counter spell off of it, or I want to be casting this in the after attacks have been declared, especially if I'm in blue-white, because if I can hit instant speed removal, that's huge.
And then you're not even that sad to discover the impossible and find Deliberate, scry 2, draw 1.
Especially if you're digging for a specific card or specific kind of answer. Getting a draw spell off of it is still useful to look deeper. Even if I'm getting an opt, if I'm looking for a specific answer or a specific way to close out the game, then I am still appreciative of being able to look 7 cards deep with this instead of 5.
Yeah, and then I think I especially like the aspects of this in a blue-red deck where you're playing the Pyromancer effects, because it is 2 spell casts within 1 card.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about this card in compare. I don't think this card should be compared too much to cards like Supreme Will that do have the same kind of versatility of being potentially a answer to a threat and also digging in any other instance. I think this shouldn't be viewed as a counterspell. I think it should be viewed as a draw spell that you will cast in response to spells being cast, just in case you hit things like counterspell, memory lapse. Why am I blanking on the names of the two force spikes?
Sensor and Jarway Disruption.
Yeah.
Burned into my brain.
If you really want to tilt someone out, like
someone.
If you really want to tilt UFO specifically out, all you gotta do is cast Discover the Impossible, and the 5th card deep is Jawari Disruption while they're tapped out.
Yes.
Yeah. And Rectic in the chat notes another new card that actually works really well with Discover the Impossible being Disruption Protocol. Because
you need
even though
another mana to cast that, if you do cast it
you need another mana to cast it, but it's still a effectively 3 mana spell that you can cast off of it.
Yeah, I do kind of want to see if there's more stuff that can be done with Disruption Protocol. I imagine that, like, I don't know, people played Witching Well for a bit, and like Portable Hole exists. I don't know if there's really enough density for it to be good, but I do want to try it.
I have a feeling that, especially if we're talking like heavy counter density control decks, there's probably a worse cancel being played right now than this.
Yeah, I mean, people are always playing worse cancels.
Cancel is
better cancels.
Cancel is, kind of the bad version, and then you have the actively detrimental versions that you don't play, and then the ones that have slight upside, like Disruption Protocol.
Yeah.
And I think there is another blue card from this set that we haven't really touched on in this review, which is what's it called? 1 blue to cast, 1 blue to crack.
Mnemonic Sphere, I believe.
Mnemonic Sphere, yeah.
Yes.
Mnemonic Sphere. Yeah, that card also could be good there.
Yeah, and I think personally, if you are still playing Hieroglyphic Illumination in a control deck right now, first of all, why? But also replace it with this. And not to be disparaging to people who are playing draw spells, like 4 mana draw 2 is good in general, but I think specifically I found Hieroglyphic Illumination to be one of the least impressive ones I've been playing even since its release.
We've only gotten more impressive draw 2s since then.
Yeah.
Like we went like three like sets in a row of just getting better and better and better 4 mana draw 2s. Like, I think Val broke that streak, but like it seems like that's
I guess you're right. I just don't
Memory Deluge was Midnight Hunt.
Right.
And then
how can you beat
we're
that
picking
one?
it back up now with Mnemonic Spear.
Hard to top Memory Deluge.
Well, yeah, but
Val still had one, but it wasn't
better than Memory Deluge.
Yeah. Speaking of cards that they're never going to make better versions of, our next card is a reference to a card they're never going to make a better version of, and that's the Life of Tashiro Umazawa.
Yeah. So this card references popular Modern Horizons like draft staple Umazawa's Charm, and also there was some equipment, but it was also in the first Kamigawa sets, and those were bad. We don't talk about them. Life of Tashiro Umazawa is an enchantment saga for 1 and a black. It has 3 chapters. The first 2 are the same, and they are choose 1 of 3 options. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn, and you gain 2 life. The third chapter of the saga, as all of the Kamigawa sagas do, exile the saga and return it to the battlefield transformed as a creature. The creature being Memory of Tashiro, an enchantment creature type human samurai. This is a 2/3 with the ability to tap, pay 1 life, and add 1 black mana to spend on an instant or sorcery. So I've been kind of out of the loop, to be honest, recently, but a lot of people have been talking about mono white being the best deck. And I like this card as a way to
it's very good against small creatures.
Against aggro, because this kills a Danto Vanguard, and if you know me, you know how I feel about a Danto Vanguard. It also kills Thalia. So basically this card is beautiful in every way, shape, and form. So I'm never getting rid of it ever. That's a lie, but I am absolutely playing it right now in black decks. The +2/+2 isn't as relevant for a lot of like control decks, but you're very fine killing a small creature, because this kills a lot.
Just a lot of small creatures in the early game now.
Yeah,
it kills a lot of X1s that are very hard to deal with otherwise.
Yeah.
Like a Danto Vanguard is just so hard to deal with, and black is the color that has the least problems dealing with it, but having a 2 mana way to do it twice is great.
Yeah. And then like gaining 2 life, like if they don't have anything you need to kill or can kill easily with this, then you're gonna get a bit of life rebate. And then a 2/3 body is like solid. It comes in on turn 4 at the earliest, which is definitely a bit later than you really want that to be stonewalling things, but it still trades reasonably well.
So I have a thought. We haven't seen Pyromancer decks as like big as I think like they have been in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this, if we get some other like tools for that deck, is a very good card to continuously generate a little bit of advantage. Because
I'm into it there.
So first of all, on the front side, you can pump up tokens that make it so that your opponent has to make harder decision-making blocks.
Or you can pump up a Dreadhorde Arcanist.
Yeah, that also works. Getting rid of small creatures is more effective there, because then you don't have to spend spells on those creatures, especially if they're still creatures that you need to deal with. And then once it flips, Memory of Tashiro is a good like card that no one remembers has a mana ability.
Why does it have a mana? Like I know it's a reference in general, but what is it referencing here with the mana ability? Do we know? Do you know?
It is referencing the original idea for Umazawa's Jite. Early in design, the card had a mana ability as one of its 3 abilities, and then they decided that sounds dumb, and they got rid of it. And so that's why this Umazawa now has.
So
yes, because that's what made GTA 2 good.
Yeah, that would have made GTA way too good. Let's put removal on it instead.
Yeah. Oh, GTA. I'm not going to miss not having you here.
Speaking of both artifacts and removal, and frankly, Pyromancer, our next card is Voltage Surge, which is a single red for an instant that, as an additional cost to cast, you may sacrifice an artifact. It deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker, and if its additional cost was paid, it deals 4 damage to that permanent instead.
Yeah. I mean, like, 1 mana for 2 damage to a creature or planeswalker is pretty standard. We get these like once a set at this point. it's not quite Better Shock because it doesn't go face. It's like on its own a bit worse than like Flame Blast Bolt or Frostbite, though I'm not sure how much either of those two get played nowadays because we also just like have Lightning Bolt in the format. But the ability for this to go up to 4 damage for an artifact, we have a decent number of things that make artifact tokens. Treasures have become effectively deciduous. Like we have
Blues
a lot of things that make
in the previous sets.
Yeah, clues. A couple things that do like food tokens, and like just artifact tokens, like Saheeli Sublime Artificer into this. You know.
Yep.
Like.
And then you have the case where there's this one card on Arena that I don't like seeing played, but this is a good use case for it, the Ichor Wellspring.
Yeah, to let it be another card draw. Hearing you talk about a card that people shouldn't play, my thought immediately went to Perilous Mirror, and then I realized that in bots, this is a way to kill Gargaroth.
By sacrificing Perilous Mirror to deal 6 damage to a target creature.
Yeah, it technically is. Yeah, I mean, I think this card has some decent potential for like both the like bot style decks if you have expendable stuff. And I mean, again, I mentioned like the Witching Well kind of thing. Obviously, that's probably not as relevant, but like I could see tossing a Maze Mind Tome on 3 counters to do this.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
I mean, if you need to do 4 damage to a creature, you're kind of going to pay whatever price you get your ass.
Yeah.
But I also like things like, your opponent has played down a threat. You have a full grip of cards, so you don't need that midnight clock that you've been having. It's at 8 counters. You don't need to put anything else into it. And you probably actually don't want a new hand. So you're cool. You actually want to get rid of it in some cases. And using it as fuel to make your removal better is pretty neat.
So
I think bots in general pretty much always has an expendable creature in some way, shape, or form. And
especially with those new sort of it's not modular. It's just like the wording of modular such that like the modified stuff works within the draft format.
Yeah.
There's also Experimental Synthesizer, which is just a card I want to be playable in general.
I don't remember.
I don't think it.
I remember now.
It's the one red
that exiles the top. Yeah,
it exiles the top when it enters or leaves play. Yeah,
that's a card I want to be good.
It doesn't seem bad. I don't know if it's like good enough for most decks besides like artifact, like very
it's a non-creature
heavy
spell.
Yeah. Like I don't know. Maybe it's worth it. I'm probably going to try it out somewhere.
I know that this card is saying play in Modern, but I also know that that's because in that format you can have Lurrus as a companion, and you can't do that here.
We can't store Lurrus with it though, so I'm in.
Yeah. Lurrus is kind of a broken magic card at 3 mana. That has oftentimes just kind of an immediate, huge must-answer impact on the board.
I see where you're going inside the deck. Thank you. Jukin Defensive Temple is 2 and a green for a 1/1 green for a saga that its first ability, first saga chapter. It's been so long since I've actually thought about these cards. This first chapter is create a 1/1 green human monk creature token with tap, add a green. Second chapter is put a 1/1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. And then the third chapter is to flip it. The first 2 chapters are actually pretty interesting. The 3 mana for a effectively a ramp spell is not really that off of rate.
Yeah, like
and
this is a smaller Rishkar just for the front half.
Yeah, and then the 2 counters on 2 things, like sometimes you don't have anything else and you just have a 2/2 now. But an additional 2 stats to your board is still good. And then it also helps once the saga flips into the Remnant of the Rising Star, an enchantment creature, Dragon Spirit. Did you know that green gets flying now?
Sure does.
I believe it's because green can get dragons, but yeah.
I know, but I'm saying like this is one of the very rare just straight up flying creatures within green. Save the mythic dragons that you see and a few of those other small pieces like the insects. But it's not a uncommon creature, but like we haven't seen it in a while. Remnant of the Rising Star is a 2/2 with flying, and it says whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay X. When you do, put X 1/1 counters on that creature. Also, as long as you control 5 or more modified creatures, Remnant of the Rising Star gets +5/+5 and has trample. That does not count other creatures, so if you modify the Remnant of the Rising Star and then 4 other creatures, you have that buff, and it's a huge buff.
Yeah, 7/7 flying trample is
the
not
big thing
bad.
About this is that it's a flyer that will often be chipping in, and it makes every single creature you cast basically a Hydra.
Yeah,
you got a little bit of extra mana. That 2/2 is a 4/4 now.
I love cards in green that just make everything must answer threats. Those are my favorite.
And then the also solves an issue within green decks that are ramping, like a deck that might want to have a ramp spell on 3 would do, is you have a way to use all your mana every turn. And using all your mana every turn, I've heard, is a very good way to win a game of Magic.
It lets you use your mana every turn, and it also turns a lot of like the small dorks that you might not really want to draw late game into meaningful threats, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can either make them gigantic, or like if you have multiples, you play them all out, put 1 or 2 counters on them, and then you also get the 7/7 remnant.
Mm-hmm. And
also,
I was also going to mention that it is a trigger, and it's often going to be played alongside a card known as the Great Henge. I found great success in being in like top deck mode with the Remnant and Rising Star and the Great Henge in play. I would cast my creature. I would draw the card with the Great Henge first. If I had to think it was another creature, I wouldn't pay any mana into the Remnant and Rising Star, and I'd keep going. Which I know is a bit of a combine these 2 mythics and you're going to win the game sort of situation, but like also it's not an uncommon thing to run into in a green deck to have Great Henge in play and then find a creature.
Yeah.
And green just has the most trivial time like modifying their creatures as well.
Oh, no, not like white can do it in mass, but green does it already.
Yeah, like in green your creatures just come modified.
Yeah. I've been playing mono green modified pretty heavily recently, and there's some good stuff in there.
The more I play with cards in this,
the Scale, I believe, is one card that we have.
We have
originally from like Dragons of Tarkir.
Yeah, it's dragons or so.
It's basically the same text as the was it Iron Bully or Iron the little 1/1 from this set?
Iron Automaton, I think. The Bully is from War of the Spark and is much worse.
Iron Apprentice.
Okay, yeah.
And I say basically because the other one, the Iron Apprentice says put any counters on this creature onto target creature, whereas Servant of the Scale only cares about +1/+1 counters.
There's also, I believe, it's called Star Pupil from Strixhaven, or I think it's Strixhaven, which I believe does the same thing, but obviously not in the same color.
Yes. But green-white counters is also a thing that I would definitely be going into more if I wasn't extremely in love with the holy trinity of mono green.
Yeah, that is fair.
Like, turns out counters are pretty good, and especially like green-white as a color pair have been getting a lot of toys with that.
And also, I realized I mentioned something and I didn't really give much context. The holy trinity way of mono green is the giant lord. What's his face?
Yorvo,
old growth troll, and
Steel Leaf.
Steel Leaf, yeah.
Yeah, I realized I could explain exactly what they did, but I couldn't remember their names because I always remember they're like, oh yeah, I got my 3 green spell in hand. Can I cast it? Okay, keeping this hand. I didn't really care which one it is.
Their name is the best.
The best thing to be doing on 3? Card? Yes, please.
Speaking of things to be doing on 3, our next card is Kodama of the West Tree, which is 2 in green for a 3/3 legendary creature, spirit. It has reach. Also, modified creatures you control have trample, and whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, search your library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. This card is one of those cards that when I first looked at it, I thought I could see myself like really liking this card, but I need to be getting like 1 or 2 triggers off of this consistently to be liking it. It turns out it's just insane all the time.
It sure is just a 3/3 with reach that gives trample to some things that you're already doing.
Yeah, I had a situation where I forgot that I could give trample to my thing with counters on it. I think I had like one of the hydras.
Mm-hmm.
Hungering Hydra, I believe it was, the one that grows when it gets hurt.
Yeah.
Also, notably, Hungering Hydra, you may just want to play in more green decks in general. It really works well with fights.
Yeah, it's a surprisingly good card.
It works extremely well with fight spells.
I haven't really thought about it since the last, since when was it? M19? I think. Yeah, since I opened it in that pre-release and cast it off Apex of Power. But that's a whole other thing.
And then the other thing about that particular card is combining Hungering Hydra with Blizzard Brawl makes it possible for you to just go crazy.
Yeah. And God, I love Blizzard Brawl so much.
It's so good.
It's so good.
But Kodama of the West Tree, I forgot that it gave my stuff trample. And so instead of getting Kodama of the West Tree, I just got I think I got a Rish card for +2 damage instead of Kodama of the West Tree for +10 damage. When I was doing a tutor, because green can tutor creatures pretty well. I believe I left my opponent on 1 and then lost the game the next combat step.
So I've been playing a lot of Red-Green Legends recently. And
that's a legend, eh?
Yeah. This is a legend, and you know what else is a legend? Toski, the squirrel from Kaldheim.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
And
fun.
These synergize very well in a deck that finds it very easy to put a +1/+1 counter on pretty much all of your creatures. And it leads to very great board states where everything has trample, and when I inevitably hit you, I'm going to be searching my library for most of my basics, and then I'm going to be drawing cards. And because I already tutored out 80% of my lands, I get to draw all gas. It's such an amazing Toski is such a fun card that aggravates people, and the fact that a card like Kodama so perfectly enables it makes me very happy.
Yeah. And something that I've been doing with mono green is going really hard into the modified aspect. I've already had a counters deck in mono green before this set was even slightly mentioned, and all this new support for it has been really nice. One of the ones that has been quite interesting, I'm not sure exactly how I feel about it yet. I haven't got much chance to use it, but Walking Skyscraper, the uncommon from this set, 8 mana for an 8/8 with trample, and has hexproof as long as it's untapped. But it's not always 8 mana. This spell actually costs 1 less for each modified creature you control. And I don't know. It's probably not optimal in the deck, but it's definitely one that I've been wanting to try, and it has enough interesting utility. The hexproof aspect of it means that it saves itself from the problem that mono green often has against white-based mid-range and aggro decks, where you get your big thing down, and then they have Swords to Plowshares.
This gets to attack.
Oh, that's to attack. It was also really good at being defensive, because sometimes you just need a big enough thing to sit there and make it such that if they want to start attacking you, they need to lose at least some number of creatures.
So, I guess my question here is, at what mana value are you happy casting this, and when do you typically, if you were to look at a given board state and say, if I had Walking Skyscraper in my hand, would I be happy right now? How often are you happy?
Typically, you're going to be casting it for 5. You're going to be happy if you cast it for 4, and ecstatic if you cast it for 3.
Okay. And I think, even at 6, you're like, I don't know if I'm going to hit that, but I'll do it.
Yeah. And then, even honestly, later in the game, top decking Walking Skyscraper when you have enough mana to cast it is still good.
Yeah,
right?
One of the great things about
big body,
because unlike Ghalta, it actually is castable later in the game. I found that Ghalta being at 12 mana is actually a little bit prohibitively costed to actually hard cast it in most situations.
It's not a card you can really bank on hard casting, and it's a card I have taken out of actually a number of green mid-range decks, but not Legends, because that deck is already very explosive, and even though it costs 12 mana, there are a lot of cases where you can go from, this card would cost anywhere from 10 to 12 mana on one turn, and then the next turn it costs 1.
Well, right, because you have the Bard class.
Because of Bard class, yeah. I have cast this card for 1 4 times.
And remember that even with those reductions, both Walking Skyscraper and Ghalta still work really well with Vivian Monster's Advocate minus.
Yeah. They are very good cards at costing cheap and searching big.
Yeah.
Another card that,
if I may, actually.
Okay, go for it.
Just final talk on Walking Skyscraper. First of all, Vivian Monster's Advocate makes modified creatures, so just really works well together. The ability counters do count as being modified, and speaking of ability counters counting as modified, earlier in the set review we talked about Invoke the Ancients as a spell that I was just absolutely in love with in this mono-green modified list. And the Walking Skyscraper does really like seeing Invoke the Ancients creating 2 tokens that are modified.
In fact, just Invoke and steady land drops will hit you a 6 mana Skyscraper.
Yep.
Yeah.
With no extra work.
Yeah, Invoke's very good.
Invoke the Ancients is 8 power on 2 bodies.
Similar to your point of like costing a lot, but costing not that much, but looking like it costs a lot, is our next card, Colossal Sky Turtle. This card is 4 green, blue for a 6/5 flying enchantment creature turtle that also has Ward 2. And then it also has 2 other faces because this is a triple-faced card. The second face is 2 and a green and discard it to return target card from your graveyard to your hand. And the third face is 1 and a blue and discard it to return target creature to its owner's hand. This card is...
they printed Who, What, Where, When, Why as a black border card. This card's so good.
Notably, channel being uncounterable is a thing to just consider when you're looking at these effects, especially when you're looking at a card where the channel abilities are the primary use of it.
Yeah, like you get to just regrowth something without them really being... They can still exile the card, but they can't counterspell you. And it's instant speed, so you can hold up counter magic. You can hold this up to bounce a thing if you need to. And
honestly, like it being instant speed regrowth is one of the biggest aspects of it, because like
instant speed is huge.
It also could be a case where you're trying to regrow something important and they go and like cling to dust it.
Yeah.
Being able to respond to graveyard interaction when you're with this is a thing that regrowths we already have don't really do. Or is what's it called? Once Upon a Time. What's
Once in Future.
Once in Future. That weird adamant one.
Yeah. Colossal Sky Turtle is just... I can't get past the versatility of this card. And specifically, decks like Green-Blue Turns, where this card stalls out the game against aggro decks. It buys back Fogg's Wraths, or Fogg's Answers, Time Warps, and in the case where you already have a way to buy yourself enough time to win the game if you have a threat, it also acts as a threat that's hard to deal with because of that Ward 2.
Mm-hmm. This also is a card that might even just go into mono green lists. A 4-mana instant speed regrowth. A 3-mana instant speed regrowth is actually quite useful, and getting 1 blue mana is not that hard for a deck that is playing green.
I do just have the dorks that can get there.
I think this card could see kind of the same kind of splashing that like a monocolored aggro deck does for Scrap Heap Scrounger. A mono green deck might do for Colossal Sky Turtle.
Yeah, you play like a breeding pool.
Yeah, because frankly, this channel regrowth ability on its own is already at worst third best regrowth that we have in the format. And I think I want to put it at second.
Balagate Recovery, I think, has a hard time being unseated.
I that's my thing, is that like the two big things of being uncounterable and being instant speed are enough for at least me to put it over regular regrowth.
Yes.
But Balagate Recovery is just such a deceptively powerful card, purely by nature of being also a land, that I don't think it can ever get like unseated in that way. But
because like even if you're not looking to be a big old regrowth type of deck, you spend one piece of your tap land budget, and sometimes you're like, well, I've got 7 mana and a questing beast in my graveyard. And Questing Beast being 2 green for a legendary creature type beast for 4 Vigilance, Death Touch, and Haste. Questing Beast cannot be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. Whenever Questing Beast deals combat damage to a player, deal that much damage to the target planeswalker that player controls. And damage dealt by creatures you control cannot be prevented. Which is quite a good card, right?
Yeah, it's a very good card to buy back off of things. And while I think Colossal Sky Turtle doesn't have the same amount of like versatility especially in like a mono green environment that Valakut Recovery has, it's still really good to be second place for an monocolored activated ability on a multicolored card.
Yes,
is second place for regrowths.
Because I think in a deck that can cast both abilities, this is the best regrowth.
Yeah. If you have a way to recur this Sky Turtle in any way, or to be able to cast this Sky Turtle pretty much ever, it's so good. Like,
yeah, and also
how do people beat like a 6/5 flyer with protection?
Hope that they still have some sort of removal before that might have been spent already on the things that you were casting before 7 mana.
Yeah,
like
speaking of casting removal, though, especially on a big thing like this, Hinata the Dawn Crowned is 1 and a Jeskai, blue, red, white for a legendary creature, Kirin Spirit, 4/4, flying and trample. Spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each target. Spells your opponent cast cost 1 more to cast for each target. Effectively, Hinata has it's not exactly Ward 1, but it's basically Ward 1.
Yeah. So hear me out.
Yes.
Thalia, but it also makes Magma Opus cost 2 mana.
It also makes targeting your opponent's Thalia cost no extra mana.
No extra mana, yeah.
Right, Magma Opus has so many targets.
So Magma Opus, if you are hitting 4 different targets with the damage and 2 different permanents with the tapping, is 2 mana for a 4/4 that taps 2 permanents and hits things for 4.
Gross.
Yeah, this works really well also with like X spells, where X ends up being the amount of targets. Where you'll say, okay, I have this spell that says X target creatures each, have something done to them, which are typically not great, but being able to say 1 mana, or for the Blue March, it's just like 1 mana fog.
1 mana, make your board wipe irrelevant.
Yeah.
And then also notably, I think, if I remember correctly, this does discount auras.
Yes, this will discount
because
auras.
It's just spells.
And it also works.
I believe it works with mutate, right?
It should work with mutate, because if you mutate targets, you're casting it, targeting a spell, targeting a creature. This works really good with commands. It works really good with just any card that wants to target, even just like the baseline of this card, saying essentially your answers cost 1 less, your opponent's answers cost 1 more, is enough for me to really like it. Yeah, like, I mean,
you can get that.
I don't think this makes Sublime Epiphany good, but I think
it also does just reduce the cost of your counter magic, because it doesn't care about targeting permanents, it just targets.
Yeah, it makes your Memory Lapse cost 1 mana, which makes me a little bit like uneasy. Like, it makes me a little sick to my stomach of like, oh god, there's way better force spikes now that I might have to deal with.
Yeah,
and the times when this is the card that makes me play Jeskai mid-range or Jeskai control-ish mid-range, where I'll be playing against UFO and I'll have this Hinata out and they'll be like, oh, Seismic only has 1 open mana, I'm fine to play my spells. And then I'll hit them with Dwari Disruption for 1 mana and send them to the Shadow Realm.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm into this.
The only reason I'd want to play Jeskai midrange is to have a creature deck that can tilt UFO out, and Hinata makes that so easy.
I will say legitimately one of my least favorite archetypes to run into is creature pressure plus counter magic.
Yeah,
because I play. It's not that that's even oh my god, that's the best thing to be doing in Magic, but it's the best thing to be doing against the weird combo decks I play.
Yeah, there's something so infuriating about saying to yourself, okay, I guess I'm fine with my threat being answered. That's fine. And then you close your eyes for a moment, and by the time you open them back up, your opponent also has 2 creatures on the board, and you're like, oh, I guess I die. And there was a time on Arena where, before Gladiator, where Mono Blue Tempo was a very big deck. And
Curious Obsession, my beloved.
Yeah, Curious Obsession, so many cards that were just you want to tilt your opponent out, here are all of the tools.
Yeah, and the thing about Mono Blue Tempo at that time was, there's a weakness to these types of decks, which is removal spell for the first creature that's played, because it's usually the cornerstone of the strategy.
Yeah.
Mono Blue Tempo back then used to play 8 effective copies of a Hexproof Grantor.
Yeah, it played
Dive Down,
and I think
it was usually Spell Pierce is the other thing.
Yeah, Spell Pierce was
playing the deck.
One. But anyway, the Hinata being so good at coming down at a decent pace, and then also being able to fairly cheaply protect it is a big aspect of it, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And speaking of something coming down and just being really good at protecting itself, Kaito Shizuki is our next card, and it is a legendary planeswalker Kaito for 1 blue black. At the beginning of your end step, if Kaito Shizuki entered the battlefield this turn, he phases out, which effectively means he stops existing for all intents and purposes for your opponent. +1, draw a card, then discard a card unless you attacked this turn. -2, create a 1/1 blue ninja creature token when this creature can't be blocked. And -7, you get an emblem with whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, search your library for a blue or black creature card, put it on the battlefield, then shuffle. I didn't even know this ultimate existed, and you probably won't either, because it's just a +1 and -2 that are really the bread and butter of this card. Meat and potatoes, so to speak.
Actually, as much as I think that this ultimate is not going to be reached often, like most Planeswalker ultimates, Kaito's the play pattern that Kaito makes you want to utilize is a lot more conducive to being able to hit that -7 at some point. And
sort of, because the way I see it, if I may, is you play it for 3, you -2, you get your token. If he phases out, and you come back next turn, you have a unblockable creature, so you can guarantee an attack. You have attacked trigger, and you can +1, and you draw a card. Yes. And now, you have your full mana to protect this planeswalker, because tapping out for Kaito doesn't really materially matter unless they have unless your opponent, they have instant speed interaction to deal with it, because they can't do it. They can't do anything with it creature wise until after you've untapped and have your defenses back up.
Yeah. So, and then at that point, you have made both a creature that's consistently able to hit for 1 damage without any real like pushback from your opponent, and you can spend your turns having this draw engine every turn, ticking up Kaito to make it harder to deal with him. And then also, because, you know, when this phases back in on turn 4, you can then play defensive creatures. You can play, you know, a 2-drop and hold up 2 mana of interaction. Like, you can turn the game into protect the king, and then, like, if you successfully do that, Kaito is a very good value engine that also supplies you with the way to kill your opponent. And actually, now that I think about it, the -7's probably not going to be that important. But the reason it's not that important is because your opponent's already going to be dead by the time you -7.
Yeah, like if you have a Kaito in play this long, you're in very good shape already.
And like, even if you are doubling counters, like you have a Vorinclex in play, you don't even get an instant ultimate by casting Kaito.
I mean, yeah, the ultimate is really like a little bit of gravy on what is already a very good plate of steak and potatoes of a planeswalker. That analogy was not great. You know who else has to do? You know who else has to do with very convoluted lines of thought? It's Satoru Umazawa. 1 blue-black for a 2/4 legendary creature, human ninja.
God, I whenever you segues.
It's great. They're my specialty. Whenever you activate a ninjutsu ability, you look at the top 3 cards of your library. You put one of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. This ability triggers only once each turn. And also, each creature card in your hand has ninjutsu for 2, a blue, and a black. So, unfortunately, Joker Boney is out for this part of the review. So I'm going to talk about their line in their stead, because this means so much to Joker. Essentially, what you want to do with this card, and again, don't blame me for this.
If I may guess.
Go ahead and guess.
This involves making and dealing infinite damage within the combat step?
Technically, but more along the lines of, if we can generate, if we can make this ninjutsu ability effectively cost 0, or in eventually -1, we can win the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so the ways you do that are way too complicated to explain succinctly, but they involve Rapacious Dragon, which is a 5-drop dragon that creates, creates 2 treasures upon entry. You play things like Zorn, that makes, whenever you create a treasure, you create that many +1.
Do the activated ability reduction spells things work, or is that not? Is just not an activated ability?
It depends.
Zerda.
It depends on the card, because certain ones say like activated abilities of this permanent, of like a permanent cost less, which doesn't work with Satoru. But if it's like just like activated abilities cost X less, that would work. I don't think we have the latter though.
Activate abilities. Abilities you activate that aren't mana abilities cost 2 less to activate.
Yeah, that would work.
Yeah, Zerda, the Dawnwalker.
Okay, yeah. So Zerda specifically works because it had to work with cycling.
Yeah.
But you do all of that incredible amount of work. You also need things like parallel lives in order to double up your tokens to actually make mana.
Zerda
or
plus
you need
Rapacious Dragon is neutral.
Yeah, so Zerda plus Zerda or a parallel lives plus Zorn and Rapacious Dragon and something else that makes a treasure or either 1 or 2 treasures on entering.
We have like a couple ones that make a single treasure.
If I may, I think we're talking about this. Parallel Lives, Zorn, and Rapacious Dragon with
that should be enough.
It is infinite tokens.
But the thing is, you need another creature in your hand that creates that also like doesn't make you net lose mana, because you don't need to make 4 mana per loop of this. You need to make 8 mana across 2 creatures. And they have to be different.
Put a Burning Tree Emissary in there.
So yeah, you don't use a Burning Tree because you need specifically treasures, or you need blue and black mana.
I mean, if you have like some treasures.
Anyway, there's ways to do it. I guess that's the way we're saying.
The one Joker likes to use is Skullport Merchant, because Skullport Merchant also lets you then draw cards once you have a metric butt ton of treasures. So Skullport Merchant then lets you draw out your whole deck until you find something to kill your opponent with. And all of this is to say Satoru Umazawa has really dumb and cool combo lines, and it might be useful for like a like blue-black Reanimator deck, because a lot of your threats in that deck also are either not worth blocking or have effective evasion. Like Mire Triton has Death Touch as actually an evasive ability because it's not worth blocking most of the time.
Mire Triton, my beloved.
It's wonderful. And being able to just bounce that back to your hand to recast it, and also getting down a reanimation target that's been stuck in your hand is pretty effective. Again, I don't think Satoru Umazawa is that good. I think it's very funny.
Though, there is a much easier combo with Satoru Umazawa that we just don't have yet. It's called attacking, being unblocked, and putting a Blightsteel Colossus in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that works. But that's not nearly as fun.
Speaking of
Phyrexia.
Yeah, beat me to it.
Our next card is Tamiyo Completed Sage. Violet, I think you were going to talk on this one, so I'll let you introduce the card as well.
Tamiyo Completed Sage is a legendary planeswalker Tamiyo for 2, a green, Phyrexian Simic hybrid, and a blue. So you have to pay 2 green and blue. And then for the final mana pip, you can either pay green mana, pay blue mana, or pay 2 life. And this planeswalker comes with the ability Completed, which the fact that they're keywording it is... It has implications.
Could you imagine this is a precursor to some sort of Phyrexian set coming forth?
I look forward to it. But completed specifically, it outlines the Phyrexian mana cost and says if life is paid to cast this Planeswalker, it enters the battlefield with 2 fewer loyalty counters. She starts with 5, and then that becomes 3 if you cast her with life. So you get a 3 loyalty walker on 4 or a 5 loyalty walker on 5. Though, like, honestly, you can give or take when you cast it because it's still going to be great. The +1 says tap up to 1 target artifact or creature. It doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step.
Wait, it taps artifacts too?
Mm-hmm. Yep. It hits vehicles, I think, is the reason that makes sense. She has a -X that says exile target non-land permanent card with mana value X from your graveyard and create a token that's a copy of it. And then -7, create Tamiyo's Notebook, a legendary colorless artifact token with spells you cast cost 2 less to cast and tap to draw a card. I love this card.
Can I tell you a story?
Yes.
So I was playing a version of a Sultai Tainted Pact deck. Who did I get it from? This was a build that I was sent by... Oh, I don't remember. 1 second. LMNOP. And what Tamiyo Completed Sage did in this particular instance was I cast Tamiyo for 5 mana, and I innocuously -1'd Tamiyo to bring back a Gilded Goose. My opponent, believing that the Tamiyo was the biggest problem, used a hard removal spell on the Tamiyo. Tapped out. Turns out that was a lie. I just needed the one mana value Gilded Goose token to neoform it into a Thassa's Oracle.
Oh, that's beautiful.
My God.
I love that so much.
Also, Tamiyo's just, like, in addition to being kind of a almost red herring of a threat, it's also just a threat of, like, it stabilizes the board. It costs 4 mana, which is really good for having this much of an ability to freeze creatures. And then, when you've decided, I guess I'm fine, like, getting another Uro trigger from my graveyard. Actually, that's a bad one. Don't do that. Once you decide, you know what?
I want another Maze Mind Tome.
Yeah, well, no, Maze Mind Tome will probably be in exile.
Maybe you discarded it or something, but yeah.
I guess Ranger class. When your Ranger class has been destroyed by your opponent's Boseiju that we'll talk about later, you can, at some point, whenever you feel like it, Tamiyo's going to be sticking around for a while if you're doing your job right and keeping a well-maintained board. You're going to be able to get it back whenever you feel like it, and just, it's so good.
Yeah. I want to, I think I've cast this once on 3 off of, like, an Into the North, and I don't know how you come back from that easily.
Yeah.
If they can't immediately get rid of it.
Also, they're
just good.
The -X makes tokens, which is very fun with Essica's Chariot in many ways.
What if you make a token copy of the Chariot? You can just make more chariots.
Yeah, you can get 2 cats per turn instead of 1 cat per turn.
I need to add something to my Simic Turns deck.
Well, no, 2 cats per turn, and then 4 cats per turn, and then 6 cats.
No, because you can only keep 1 chariot.
Oh, is Chariot legendary? Oh,
yeah, Chariot's legendary. But you should absolutely be playing Essica's Chariot in turns. The card enables so many combos.
Yeah,
I see.
Did you know that Timeless Witness makes a token?
Yes. My new suggestion, though, play Chariot, animate Chariot, spark double Chariot.
Then get exponential chariots.
No, then Mythos of Aluna, the spark double Chariot.
There we go.
Yeah.
And then attack for 7 turns.
And then you don't have to be playing any bad cards, like I was about to say Mirror Box.
I mean, Mirror Box is not that terrible, all things considered, honestly.
It could be worse. It could be Mirror Gallery.
Yeah. I do wish they just didn't have the non-token clause within Mirror Box, because then it would have cool uses in other places, but
yeah.
It does say non-token. Which also does mean that, like, making token copies of legendary creatures doesn't work, which is why I kind of like, it just doesn't seem right. I honestly think that they're worried about someone making like 20 goblin tokens and attacking for 300 damage, but like, is that bad? Is that bad?
Goblin players need a win sometime. Come on.
Yeah. Give goblins a good time. Speaking of giving goblins a good time,
give Gladiator coat of arms.
Yeah. Oh, I've been having some chaos thoughts about Gladiator, and I realized, I think for the first time the other day, that Upheaval is in Modern, thanks to Modern Horizons 2. And I haven't seen the card cast once in a game of Modern. And
yeah, that tracks.
It got me to thinking, how would Upheaval be in Gladiator? Because people would play it.
I think it would be at the same power level that Mind's Desire is right now.
Yeah, where it's like, people play it, but it's not like
good.
Yeah, it's not good enough, but it's very like impactful and very cool. Yeah,
a card that we could eventually get in Gladiator that would do a lot of interesting things would be Boomerang.
Yeah, Boomerang would be interesting.
Boomerang sort of thing would be interesting. Give me Capsize.
To Boomerang back this conversation. We were talking about giving goblins some love. You know what card gives goblins a little bit of love? Secluded Courtyard. It's a land that, as it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type. You can tap to add colorless, or you can tap it for 1 mana of any color to spend only on a creature spell of the chosen type, or to activate an ability of a creature or creature card of the chosen type. So for all of you folks who are playing multicolored tribal decks, here's a new land for you. And for all of you people on multicolored warriors decks, you can cut base camp now.
Yay!
I don't think I was talking to JB about this earlier, and I don't think you wanted to be running base camp anyway, but this card's actually good, and being able to activate abilities as like an upgrade to unclaimed territory is a very nice addition that lets you have a lot more flexibility in what kind of cards you play in your tribal deck, and makes this have less of a cost in deck building, because when you're even on like 2-color tribal decks, you might get beamed once or twice from not being able to activate an ability, and these come at a cost of not being able to cast like non-creature spells for colored mana. I feel like UFO is wanted to jump in on something.
you might not be able to hear it, but I'm frantically typing something. I'm trying to figure something out.
Oh, I can hear it.
I don't know.
I don't know if the stream can hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For some reason, Scryfall is being glacially slow. Did I just like imagine this? Did we get the Rainbow Land that only taps for creature mana?
Yes, we do have Ancient Ziggurat.
Yes.
Yeah, we do. It was in like a.
It was in an anthology.
Anthology, yeah.
Maybe I think it might have been in like 2 or 3.
I feel like it was 2.
I think honestly, Ancient Ziggurat probably is gonna come back. May actually come back and have a bunch of use in Gladiator coming soon, because like more and more decks are going really high on creature density, and the more that we're, the more just creatures we're playing in decks, like creature counts going up quite a bit, the more Ancient Ziggurat has use. But Ancient Ziggurat has the continuous rule, I think, in my opinion, that you need to be playing like 60 creatures in your deck.
Gotta be really high on them
to be on it.
You get so few slots for non-creatures if you're on Ziggurat, realistically.
I'm sorry, it was Historic Anthology 3? How far back is that?
Frankly, all of the Historic Anthologies are old at this point.
Yeah, I feel so old.
We haven't had a new Historic Anthology in a little while. Also, notably, what is it? We're 2 months away from the 2-year anniversary of the format. No, 1 month away.
Oh, yeah, we are getting close.
We're a month away.
Yeah.
Please stop telling me things I don't want to hear.
Wait, no, maybe I'm wrong.
It's like
about 2 months.
Between 1 and 2 months, yeah. It was like mid-April when we started things up here.
I think it was end of March.
Was it? I don't remember. Maybe it was March.
I mean,
I can look up my oldest message on the Gladiator Discord at some point, but
I don't know I want to.
For now, I want to talk about some cards that I have never been down on, but I think I've been lower on them than a lot of other people. They are the legendary lands with channel. The first one, for purposes of bringing up the card, is Boseiju, Who Endures, which taps for a green, and then has the channel ability for 1 and a green to discard it and destroy target artifact, enchantment, or non-basic land an opponent controls. That player may search their library for a land card with a basic land type, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature you control. Before I talk about Boseiju in specific, I want to say for the whole cycle that these cards don't have like an inherent downside of like over a basic land, but I do think for a lot of decks, especially if you are including green, I think that there is a limit on how many monocolored lands that aren't counted as forests you can run in a deck. I don't think you get to run every single one that we'll ever have. And I don't think we're at the point of cutting any of these lands from decks right now, especially because they're all really good. But I think that these cards, despite not really having a cost to include in your deck, you do have a finite amount of space for them.
Yeah.
And on the card specifically, Boseiju is nuts. God, this card is so good.
It's so good.
Who cares about giving my opponent lands? It's so good.
Yeah. I imagine there are times where you will end up eventually getting burned by this, giving them a land, but it doesn't matter compared to being able to deal with like whatever. Notably, this hits both sides of Esconta.
Yeah.
And it also just like there are a decent number of artifact enchantment creatures. And
yeah, this is better than saying destroy target non-creature, non-planeswalker permanent.
Yeah. This destroys like faceless havens, which is spooky.
Yeah, destroying any creature land, frankly. This can... what I got to do the other day was someone had activated Hall of the Storm Giants, and I Besaju'd it in response.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Once it's a creature, you can still hit it, but it has ward.
But you just made me realize how terribly I misplayed with that exact interaction previously. I let it become a creature back and paid 5 mana for it.
I'm sorry.
Also, by the way, update. The earliest messages in the Gladiator Discord is April 22nd, 2020.
So about two months.
A little under 2 months.
A little bit less than 2 months, almost on the dot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And yeah. God, Besajo is so good.
Yeah.
I've already been burned by the fact that they get to tutor any land with a land type, like with a basic land type, as well as the fact that if you destroy an artifact or an enchantment, you are ramping them. One time I've gotten burned by firing off this Besajo early on a saga that I could not deal with if it got to like actually like flourish. And I got then hit with a turn 5 Dream Trawler, which white-blue having a turn 5 Dream Trawler is not something that I was expecting, but I gave my opponent it.
Yeah.
And also, I've been burned by the fact that, you know, this lets my opponent grab and incentivizes my opponent grabbing dual lands, grabbing certain utility lands, and grabbing the weird Eldraine lands. No one's gotten Mystic Sanctuary off of it, and like that trigger. But I have had someone make a dwarf off of my Besajo with the red Eldraine land.
I forgot people ever considered playing that card, to be fully honest with you.
Sometimes it's just a free dwarf.
Sometimes, yeah, I guess.
But Besajo notably does care about things like that, and so like it has these downsides, but being able to both play this as a land and then in different games just shoot it off as a removal spell, especially in decks where you are feeling that like the land variance is high, having these channel lands is really effective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just they're so easy to have, and the fact that they come in untapped is so like, you know, it's pretty interesting to be able to just say, yeah, no, this is like, you know, going down one basic is not like a small cost, but it's also not. It's much less of a cost when you're replacing it with an untapped land. Right?
Yeah.
So That's about what I have on channel and the Discard in general.
Yeah.
Next, we have, I'd say, the second best of the channel lands.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
The Janjo. How do you say it?
Ganjo, I think? I don't know. That is an I, not an L.
Ijanjo, Seat of the Empire. Legendary land. Adds a white and channel for 2 and a white. Discard it. Deals 4 damage to target attacking or blocking creature with the legendary clause, which I've almost never seen come into play. That legendary clause.
So, fun fact. I activated a Subversive Acolyte against white-blue control and chose the second mode.
Oh.
Assuming I would be fine.
Yeah, because they don't do damage.
Yeah, until this. And I was like, I guess they could have a Gideon's Reproach, but like, who plays that? And they put it on a land, so you can. Yeah. Like, this card's just good, right? It's an untapped mana source. It kills things with up to 4 toughness. Play it in your white decks right now. This card's just good. I don't know that there's much to say about it. There isn't really as much of a downside. Like, holding this when it is one of your untapped lands in control can be maybe awkward. And you will have to play it sometimes when you'd rather have the effect. But even with that, you're fine with using either half of it.
Yeah, exactly. And, a second untapped white source is also pretty important in those types of decks, and having the utility there is very cool. Honestly, the channel lands are just going to be played. There's very little reason not to play them when you have access to those colors. Like, the only place I'd see not playing at least 1 or 2 of them is in like 5 color, maybe. Because you want to be able to get stuff off your Fabled Passages and such. But like, even there's a good chance you play these.
So I think 5 color might have a difficult time simply because like, you have so few slots for monocolored lands in that deck, and you generally want to make sure that you can tutor up a basic sometimes.
For sure.
So it might not have a great fit in like 5 color, but I think pretty much anywhere else, these are very good additions. The next of these, speaking of which, is Otawara, Soaring City, which is the same as the others, but its channel ability is 3 and a blue, and returns target artifact, creature, enchantment, or planeswalker to its owner's hand, and costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature you control. So
why does it say non-land? Why doesn't it say non-land permanent?
I don't know. Creature lands, but I don't know why they specified that.
Well, I guess the fact that it hits creature lands is actually it is nice.
Yeah. I've also had the ability to bounce a treasure vault with this.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Treasure vault. The Urza saga.
What if these this and Boseiju were like tuned this way because like development was really worried about like AFR just completely wrecking standard with treasures.
With
treasures and like the deck like that's built around that. So using things like having the artifact clause matter for treasure vault, or it also works with all of the creature lands in AFR. To when someone pays 5 mana to activate Cave of the Frost Dragon, you can still bounce that for 4 mana.
I think the creature landline makes sense. I think AFR popping off with the treasures deck makes a little less, given how toned down those ended up being.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, our next one is the red one. It makes 2 colorless spirit tokens, and they get haste. Channel 3 in red.
Yeah.
With the legendary clause, of course.
Yes, of course.
So
legendary clause.
This reminds me, that
it's just
legendary
so
clause.
Low cost.
Yeah, like you play this. You don't always do much with it, but you certainly play it, because it's like almost free to do so, and sometimes you just get 2 extra bodies to kill them with.
So having the channel ability make bodies, give those bodies haste, and be cost reduced by the amount of legendary creatures you control. Frankly, like a lot of red's like good aggressive threats are starting to come in legendary creature form. So
yeah, there are a decent
having
number
this
of them.
be like 3 mana, like a good amount of the time, makes this really appealing to channel. And in a deck like Red Green Legends, I've been able to channel this for 1 mana before. And it feels so good. Like just adding 2 more bodies to the battlefield for such a low deck building cost is very impactful. And this is the only one of these lands that can like single-handedly kill your opponent.
Which 2 damage.
Yeah. You know, this starts hitting the opponent in the face. Like, this is the only one that goes face. And then there's the black one. That's Takanuma Abandoned Mire, which is all of the same stuff as the previous ones. The channel ability is 3 and a black. Discard it to mill 3 cards, then return a creature or planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand, and then the legendary modifier. This one's the weirdest.
Yeah, but I think it's also has the least utility of them.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, you're still going to see it played, right?
Oh, yeah. And I've played a lot of mono black aggro, although I've kind of toned it down since Kamigawa released. But I've had the biggest problem being that I have a Phyrexian Obliterator in my hand, or one hits the battlefield, but in some way it gets removed before it can do anything cool. Because, you know, cards like that are a removal magnet. And I have a lot of, like, really efficient legendary creatures. Black tends to do that really well. So I can definitely see myself paying 2 mana to... paying 2, sometimes 3 mana to return this Phyrexian Obliterator, or maybe like a Grey Merchant of Asphodel, back to my hand and closing out the game because of that.
Yeah, honestly, the channel lands seem so low cost that them having this type of utility is just really butter.
Yeah. This set has been just so exciting for like cards that are just generically really nice to have. Not even necessarily like super high powered, because I think this is in general like in raw power level, this is a little bit of a downtick, but it's an extremely good set in terms of like versatility, in terms of usability, and again, generic power. It's such an exciting set, and I think these channel lands are kind of just the anchor for all of that, saying we've made one of the most versatile sets in Magic's history. We have sagas that do a ton of different effects. We have Channel, which lets players do different things. We have Ninjutsu, which also like just has a lot of versatility with how these cards can be played. And not to mention, the mechanic that's all about making creatures versatile in Reconfigure. There's so much versatility in this set, and that kind of versatility makes me enjoy, and it's why I think, this is one of the sets that, if anything, will make mid-range a little bit more feasible, because it's chock full of cards that are always good, and that a good amount of the time will be all-stars, and mid-range usually capitalizes on that.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to talk about one more exciting card, but I don't know which card to talk about to kind of end us off. Actually, I do know.
Okay.
Effie, I'm sorry. Bring up Mech Titan Core.
Oh, God. Damn it.
This card is actually kind of nuts, and
I never really read all of it, so let's see.
So,
I stopped paying attention after it said 10/10.
So, Mech Titan Core is 2 mana for a 2/4 artifact vehicle, so it doesn't actually add power to the board yet. But you can pay 5 mana and exile it and 4 other artifact creatures and or vehicles you control to create Mech Titan, a legendary 10/10 construct artifact creature token with flying, vigilance, trample, lifelink, and haste. That's all colors. And then when that token leaves the battlefield, return all creatures exiled with Mech Titan Core except for itself to the battlefield tapped under their owner's control. So this sounds like a metric ton of hoops to jump through.
But it's also a 2 mana 2/4 vehicle with 2 crew 2.
Yeah. So like it doesn't add power, but it adds a huge toughness boost, especially to like bots decks where all of your creatures pretty much are artifact creatures, and being able to transition from the offensive to the defensive depending on the matchup or depending on how the board state looks is something that bots likes to do, and this really helps it out.
Also, I do appreciate that you can just like put 5 servos onto the Mech Titan Core and you get a giant behemoth.
Yeah. Also, Mech Titan is an insane creature.
Can we see the token? Can we see the token for this? Do you have the token for this?
I think so. On the subject of this token, it's so beautiful. Having both lifelink, evasion, vigilance, and haste makes it so that you're not losing like tempo, because it has haste. You can still attack with it.
Why are you saying other words? You're not losing.
Yeah, you're not losing, but like you're just not losing resources by activating this in really any way. Like you immediately get a 20-point life swing.
Yeah, no, this is a
like
I see,
and then you get to block to
there.
gain another 10.
Yep.
Well, actually, you don't gain another 10 on blocks because your opponent just can't attack into this.
Or if they do, they are
very confident.
They're on something. Yeah. They're doing something else that you need to be worried about.
Yeah,
I probably wouldn't actually be getting 10 from blocking because I wouldn't block most things with the Mech Titan, just because what in the world would they be? Why
are you doing this?
What are you doing? Yeah.
Do you have a death touch combat trick? Question mark.
I haven't seen one of those in Gladiator in months.
I haven't seen one of those in Gladiator ever.
But also the fact that it's not, unless you're getting rid of tokens for this, which valid, you are still retaining the board presence when this dies as well. And if you're getting rid of tokens to fuel Mech Titan, then you already were like, tokens tend not to add the most board presence. So if you are getting rid of Brea's Apprentice and its token, plus, you know, an assemblage of other things, you're still getting, frankly, both of those creatures back when the Mech Titan goes away. So it's not immune to removal, but you're not disappointed if your opponent spends removal, because they spent removal on something you really didn't spend a card for.
Yeah. I'm kind of low on this card personally, because I have seen too many things like it. But
the card's not that good. I'm gonna be honest.
I think it's a fun idea.
Yeah.
And speaking of fun ideas, this was a great podcast, and I think we're about to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As always, thank you for coming. Thank you all for coming and watching. Engage in the ways you can on the platform you are, whether that be physical or on, say, YouTube. Otherwise, I have been UFO.
I've been Seismic Lawns.
And I have been Violet Blight.
And we'll see you all later.